Obesity?
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Party leaders make their pitch to the public on the last day of campaigning before polls open in the local elections.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Wednesday the 4th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Thank you for your company. Here's what's leading our news this morning. Party leaders are due to visit key electoral battlegrounds today, 24 hours ahead of the polls opening for the local elections.
Prime Minister is expected to visit Hampshire, and the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer will be campaigning in Wakefield, with the cost of living likely to be the biggest issue on the agenda.
In Ukraine, President Zelensky used his latest national address to thank Boris Johnson for his important words after he addressed the Ukrainian parliament yesterday.
He also appealed for a ceasefire to allow for more evacuations from the Mariupol steel plant.
You can join in the news this morning. This is the People's News. You can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet @gbnews. Be good to hear from you.
To our top story this morning, and this is the last day of campaigning before polls open in the local elections tomorrow. Whatever the results are, they'll likely affect the political futures of the major party leaders.
GB News political editor Darren McCaffrey. Darren is in Sunderland for us this morning to give us the picture there. Darren, good morning to you.
Hello, Eamonn. Good morning. Crucial day tomorrow, isn't it? As you say, for all the major political parties, millions of people across England, Scotland and Wales will vote in local elections that could decide the future prospects of Keir Starmer, Boris Johnson, Ed Davey and others. It's always difficult, though, isn't it, in local elections to work out how much local issues matter in particular areas. Of course, councils run things like the roads, potholes are big issues, bin collections. How much council tax you pay matters too. But then there are those big national issues that feed in as well. Lots of people focused, unsurprisingly, on the cost of living crisis, a frustration among many that the government is not doing enough to try and help mitigate rising inflation. At the same time, the taxes are going up. And that is hopefully, or what the Labour Party would hopefully like to emphasise during this campaign. Keir Starmer saying that there should be a windfall tax, for example, on energy companies. He also is attacking that national insurance tax rise as the wrong tax at the wrong time. As for the government, though, they are trying to focus on some of those local issues. They believe that actually when you look around the country, lots of local council areas are not terribly run well by Labour, whether that's in places like Croydon or in Nottingham that have effectively gone bankrupt in recent years. But in the end, it is likely the Conservative Party are going to lose seats. Now, why is that? Well, the party is not as popular as it once was. Labour should be winning seats in a mid-term aim, and that's the whole point of opposition. If Keir Starmer is not winning seats this time round, many people will question whether he's got the ability to win the next general election. I think the big concern for the Conservative Party is just how bad tomorrow could get. Is it going to be a net loss of 100 councillors, 200 councillors, 300, 500? There were predictions at the weekend suggesting it could be the largest slump since the mid-90s when Tony Blair was about to sweep to power, though many feel that's a bit of expectation management. So all in all, it's going to be a fascinating day of politics here in Sunderland. There is concern amongst the Labour Party that's held this city for decades that the Conservatives could actually make some gains and mean that Labour lose overall control. This and many other little kind of local election disputes around the country will fill that national narrative, who on Friday will decide, as I say, whether Keir Starmer's had a good day or whether Boris Johnson has had a day that's not been that bad. And I think that's probably the greatest hope the Prime Minister can have.
I think it's interesting you're standing outside the football stadium there in Sunderland because that is integral for the community. When you think about it, Darren, as a melting pot, whatever your political persuasion is, these people are united in supporting the Black Cats there behind you. How reflective do you think, I mean, you were touching upon it there, but how reflective of a general election will these polls be, will these elections be, and should we read a national trend into them?
You know what, Amy, you're entirely right about the football. There's a big game, of course, here on Friday night. Sunderland playing Sheffield Wednesday. I talked to some people yesterday. They're not terribly happy or hopeful about what may well happen. And I suspect more people in this city are going to be concerned about what happens here than they are about the results on Friday. But you're right. I think you can read something into it. Of course, these are local election results that are swayed massively by local issues. What people are voting for in Wandsworth in South London, which the Conservatives are frantically trying to hold, compared to what they're voting for up here, is worlds away and literally hundreds and hundreds of miles away. But that overall vote share, I think, if the Conservative Party do really badly, clearly people will start to question whether the Prime Minister really does need to do more on the cost of living crisis, whether Partygate has had an impact on support for Boris Johnson. Can Boris Johnson win the next election if lots of his supporters won't turn out at this election? But also questions for Keir Starmer too. If he doesn't do particularly well, people were saying, well, if he can't do well now, when support for the Conservative Party is low, how does he expect to win the next election, which is already an uphill struggle? So, yes, it is really difficult during local elections, particularly mid-term, because the government normally get a bit of a beating to judge where we're going to be in a couple of years' time and how much that feeds into a national narrative. But it will reflect on our politics and it will influence MPs at Westminster about what they think of their political leaders.
And just finally, I mean, we talk about, mid-term elections, American term, but, at this stage in the electoral cycle, it not being very favourable for the government, and you expect that. But I wonder if the current sort of mood and the climate amongst the general public is going to be actually producing quite a low turnout tomorrow, whether or not people are feeling quite apathetic about politicians and politics in general, with all the sleaze and everything else that's been going on.
Yeah, I think that might well be the real winner tomorrow. It must be said, unfortunately, but you're right, given the number of scandals we've had at Westminster, given that turnout in local elections tends to be quite low anyway, and given, I think, where the Conservative Party is, I think turnout is probably going to be quite low. Many of people who would normally vote Conservative in general elections or typically in local elections, may decide to stay away tomorrow because of the frustration over lots of things like the cost of living crisis or Partygate or whatever else. But also there is a sense again with Labour that, you know, whatever one thinks about Keir Starmer's leadership, that he's not necessarily winning over boundless supporters. The enthusiasm is not seething, if you like, for the Labour leader, and that may well mean that in the end not that many people turn out. I mean, the weather's not very nice today, the weather matters as well, but I suspect, yeah, the main narrative on Friday will be Labour claiming victory, the Conservatives saying, well, it wasn't that bad, but overall, in the end, actually just not an awful lot of people turning out to the polls. But the polls are open tomorrow morning from 7 a.m. right through to 10, depending where you are, of course, and not everyone's going to vote tomorrow. And there are elections separately in Northern Ireland, in some ways more important elections to the Northern Irish Assembly as well, taking place tomorrow, that will decide all sorts of things, not least of all potentially the UK's future relationship with the EU. But all in all, yeah, I think the main narrative on Friday may be not many people bothered to turn out to vote at all.
I suspect you're right, Darren. We'll get more from you a little bit later in the programme. For now, thank you very much indeed. Let us know your views at home. Will you be going out to vote tomorrow?
And
or
why?
Will you be a little bit disengaged this time round? Let us know your thoughts. Staying with the local elections, Monmouthshire, easy for you to say, was the only council that was won outright by the Conservatives in Wales at the last election 5 years ago.
So ahead of tomorrow, our national reporter Bradley Harris has been to Monmouth to see if people there still think the same way as they did back in 2017.
It was 5 years ago when the Conservatives took majority control of Monmouthshire. Now they're promising to tackle bread and butter issues, such as fixing streetlights, pavements and putting potholes right as part of their latest local election campaign. But are these the issues voters here in Monmouthshire want to prioritise?
Plan of infrastructure for parking so people can park easier, for more tourism for buses to come into town, help support the shops, local businesses, and stop them from closing down really because they're not getting the customers into the shops.
I'm thinking more of the economy and the way people are struggling with household bills at the moment, but also the health system. You know, the health system is creaking after COVID particularly, so we need more money pushed into certainly health and the economy generally to help people with things like food banks and so on.
Potholes, the Wye Bridge is atrocious. It's like a third world country road. Parking in the town isn't great anymore because there's no room, and taking your kids to school or school times is just chaos, absolute chaos.
Whatever the issues are, can voters here separate local party promises with the much bigger political stories across the UK? Boris Johnson's handling of the cost of living crisis, the war in Ukraine and the continuing developments over Westminster parties held during COVID restrictions could be crucial as we step closer to May the 5th. Kate Watts runs a cafe in Monmouth. She's noticed her high street change over many years and wants to see consistency from the council.
Thanks, bye. I think there's lots of things that have been happening that, you know, could change your mind, but for me personally, no. I think it's about consistency, making sure we've got the same leader at this time. I don't think we should be changing drastically. Obviously, things like Ukraine, cost of living is really important. It's been really, really difficult over the past 5 years, so any government that was in power really would have had a difficult time. And I think it's been handled as best as it really could. Who knows, you know, if it would have been different with somebody else in power. So for me, yeah, I'm quite happy with how it's been handled.
Across Mono Bridge, others are looking for a change from a Tory majority.
Or if they got back in Monmouth, I think that would be a real retrograde step. It would be just more of the same, of the same, of the same. Not any positive aspects to them, really.
As they look to build on the gains they made 5 years ago, the Welsh Conservatives are well aware that many voters will be basing their decision on wider issues, including lockdown parties in Downing Street and the cost of living crisis. We'll get a better idea of how true that is at the polls tomorrow. Bradley Harris, GB News, Monmouthshire.
And that brings us to the news headlines you're waking up to today. The Pope has asked for a meeting with President Putin in Moscow.
He wants to try to stop the war in Ukraine, but has not yet received a response from the Kremlin.
Wayne Couzens and the killers of author Labigino Hughes will have their prison sentences reviewed together at the Court of Appeal later today.
The ex-PC Couzens was handed a whole life term for killing Sarah Everard. Emma Tustin and Thomas Hughes, who killed 6-year-old Arthur, have been sentenced to 29 and 21 years.
Protesters rallied in cities across the USA demanding abortion rights to be protected. It's after an initial draft was leaked, suggesting the Supreme Court will vote to overturn the landmark Roe v. Wade decision. No, you can have everything delivered, anything delivered to your home nowadays. You could have your breakfast delivered.
You can have coffee delivered.
Have you ever had coffee delivered?
Yes, here, because it's the second day this week. Coffee machine's bust.
So
It's mutiny in the ranks.
I mean, it's awfully convenient.
Yeah.
It's very nice. I mean, it's pricey as opposed to have things
That's
delivered.
true.
But the World Health Organization says that in 10 years, it's going to make us the fattest country in the world.
Really?
Fattest country in Europe within a decade, sorry. The fattest country in
Is
Europe.
that because it's too easy and you order more rubbish?
Yes.
Or is it because we're not walking to the supermarket to get our groceries?
I think it's a combination of all of that. And also when you go to, say, for instance, supermarket menus, it's quite limited. It's the fast, snack, convenient
Yeah,
sort
and
of
they
stuff.
always up the price as well.
Yeah. And you're tempted because you say, you know, do you fancy making anything tonight? And then if you have a takeaway, maybe you take away more. Maybe we're all having more takeaways than we used to. But we all know they're bad for you. We all know they're full of fat. They're full of sugars. They're full of salts. The thing that I can always taste more and more is salt.
See, I just love salt, so I don't mind that. Although if you wake in the night afterwards very thirsty, you know you've had too much salt in your food.
My mother's 93. And you know where you say you shouldn't have salt, it's bad for your arteries and whatever. She always has a ton of salt.
Defies the odds.
She defies everybody, believe me. But she likes her salt. But no, I just think there's too much salt in things. You can taste it straight away. Or maybe if I just got sensitive taste buds.
Well, I think it might be COVID that made you a bit sensitive to salt. I've got a theory that after COVID you started noticing it more, don't you think?
How did you remember that?
I just know.
It's very true. That was me. Let us know your salty stories, your Deliveroo stories. And if you are a Deliveroo fan, I mean, other delivery services are available, whatever it happens. What else is available? Just Eat?
Uber Eats.
Uber Eats as well.
Yeah, and the dangerous thing is they remember what you like, don't they? And sometimes
Yes.
I muddle my Uber car app with my Uber Eats, and then I open my Uber Eats and I'm like, ooh, that's what I had the last time. Maybe you have that again.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And of course, the easiest thing about it is they remember your credit card number. It's all there, so there's no messing about. You just get straight to that. 6:16 is the time. A very good morning to you, Eamonn and Isabel here with breakfast.
Now,
Delivering that to you. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're your sort of very own delivery service for that.
I was going to say other services are available, but scrap that bit. We're the only news service available.
Why do you copy everything? Why do you copy me all the time? You come in there, I have put my tie on, and then
We're
you just
in
go.
sync. We're just in sync.
You just. I think you have a spy camera on me.
It is spooky how many times, and the viewers always notice it as well, that we match.
We don't.
It's not planned.
It's not planned. We don't consult each other at all, so we're very spooky.
Yeah, it is.
Spooky.
Spending too much time together. Look, now it's day 70 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and President Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed that 156 people have been successfully evacuated from the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol.
OK, he has a daily national address, and he added that a ceasefire was needed in order to make the humanitarian corridor work.
Well, Zelensky also thanked Boris Johnson for his warm, friendly, powerful and sincere gesture as the Prime Minister announced an extra £300 million of aid to Ukraine. Well, for more on this, lawyer and Ukrainian MP Lesia Vasylenko joins us. Very good morning to you. Lesia, you were there yesterday in the Ukrainian parliament as Boris Johnson made that landmark speech. How was it received?
It was more than well received. I mean, I haven't seen a speech get that many standing ovations through the history of this parliament, of this convocation of parliament. So the words were earnest. And we know very well that these words were backed up by action as well. I think this is what really mattered. And also knowing that the UK has provided so much help to Ukraine throughout these over 2 months of the escalation, but also throughout the 8 years that Russia has been waging war on Ukraine. That also is something that really got that speech so much support yesterday.
Lesia, what about the Mariupol refugees? What's the latest situation there?
The evacuations are going on. Most of them, I'm happy to say, are going according to plan. People are getting to safety. It's a huge blessing to see families with small children who got out and who are able to seek medical care. But there are certain days when these evacuations are still blocked by Russia and by Russian forces. And the minute it's also important to understand that the minute that the evacuation hours are over, the Russian army starts to use the might of their artillery to shoot at that plant and to cause havoc there, regardless of the fact that people still remain in the basements of the steel works, which has in itself caused unnecessary casualties and unnecessary pain and suffering to innocent civilians.
Tell us a little bit about the journey that those people escaping from the steelworks have been through, because it took a very, very long time before we saw them finally yesterday. And my understanding is that various checkpoints, the Russians were making sure that they were all civilians, and in some instances removing phones, deleting photographs, footage that people may have and may take out as testimony to the Western world.
Everywhere that Russia steps in Ukraine becomes a site of barbarism, of violence, and of just complete atrocities. There's no humanity in any of the Russians' actions. The same goes for this evacuation, because the road to Mariupol, it's not the best road. It was never the best road, in all honesty. But now, with the military action intensifying all around there, these buses and these cars, they have to take a lot of village side roads, which are even in a worse condition. And at the same time, they are also packed full of Russian checkpoints. So I would imagine that people would go through some 20 or more checkpoints. At every single one, the Russians will open up the car, check the documents, check the people, check the phones, check the things, if there are any things in the car. And they're just there to inflict even more hell on the people who have been through the worst of it over the last 2 months.
Just finally, so many people have tried to broker deals, have tried to make a peace process work, the latest being the head of the Roman Catholic Church, the Holy Father, the Pope. And Pope Francis has made an offer to Vladimir Putin that he personally would travel to Moscow to try and intermediate with all of this. So far, the Kremlin haven't responded to him. Do you think anybody can make a difference? Do you think the Pope Francis could make a difference?
The Russians have their own pope. They call him the Patriarch Kirill. And Patriarch Kirill is the mastermind of the Russian world ideology. And the Russian world is such that only Russia is the greatest nation, and that there must be a big Russian empire, and all the smaller countries around Russia are not in fact countries at all, and they don't have a right to exist. And first and foremost, that goes for Ukraine. So when you are dealing with people who firmly believe in these statements that other nations have no right to exist and that Russia is the supreme nation, then I don't see how anybody can talk any sense into them.
So critical there of religious leaders across the board, but I just wanted to get your views on Pope Francis, specifically on his comments about NATO yesterday, saying that they may have caused Russia's invasion into Ukraine. What did you think of that?
Again, going back to the Russian ideology, it's important in order to understand what Russia is doing in Ukraine and what their end goal is and to find solutions, you have to understand the basis from which Russia is working. Their national Russian ideology...
Not Russian. I'm talking about the head of the Catholic Church, yeah.
Yeah, but again, you know, the head of the Catholic Church is saying that NATO caused all of this and provoked Russia. No, Russia wasn't provoked by NATO or by Ukraine. Russia has had this in their plans for years and years. From day one of Ukraine's independence back in 1991, Russia didn't accept Ukraine as an independent country. And they did everything to destabilize our country over the 30 years. And they finally prepared for an all-out invasion and aggression in Ukraine. Exactly what is happening now. NATO served as it was conveniently there just for them to say that, oh, look, there's NATO, so we are going to be protecting ourselves from NATO, so this is why we're invading Ukraine. If it wasn't NATO, it would be something else. This is something that must be understood by all the leaders of the Western world if they want to make any sense of what Russia is doing and if they want to actually come a little bit closer to finding the solution. And the solution here is to stop this aggression. And who can stop the aggression? Putin can stop the aggression because he started this aggression. Nobody else can. The way to stop Putin is actually to refute this aggression and to push it back beyond Ukraine and back into Russia's borders. And then to deal with Russia as a country which has committed the crime of aggression, as a country that needs to bear responsibility for that and that needs to pay for that. And this is something that a collective effort must be applied from among the international community, and it would be great if the Pope or any other spiritual or political leader would be in utter understanding and in utter sync with the fact that the aggression must stop, and it must be stopped by Russia and by Putin, not by Ukraine ceding territories or sitting down in any peace talks.
Okay. Well, thank you for talking to us, Lesia Vasylenko, who is a Ukrainian MP. Appreciate it. Stay safe. Thank you very much.
Well, stay with us. Coming up, we'll be live in Derbyshire, finding out what issues matter most to you ahead of the local elections tomorrow.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I'm sure it's been a sleepless night for candidates across the country ahead of the elections tomorrow, the local elections and the Assembly vote in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, more than 4,000 councillor seats will be up for grabs in all of the Scottish and Welsh local councils, plus 140 English ones as well, where not all areas are voting.
Yeah, I didn't realise that. I thought it was absolutely everywhere. Tony in Bury St Edmunds in West Suffolk, no elections there, so we can't register a vote in how we're feeling about anything as well. And a lot of you saying this, and summed up by Ron, I'm politically homeless. There is no political party that has earned my attention or my vote. So let's go to our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis. Will is in Belper in Derbyshire for the take on Amber Valley's election outlook.
Good morning. Yes, tomorrow is one of those days where you better hope that it's not raining like this. Statistically, far fewer people get out to vote when it's raining, quite like it is here in Amber Valley. Amber Valley, to give you a little bit of context, it's the biggest borough in Derbyshire. Around 130,000 people live here, but not all of them, like you just said, Eamonn, are going to be voting. In different parts of the country, you might not have a council election, but here in large parts of this area, there is going to be some elections. It's that chance, of course, to have your voice heard on local issues, the party that might be responsible for your bins, the party that might be responsible for your planning application. But of course, it is the first time that you can have your say on the national picture, despite not voting for MPs or who might be the next Prime Minister. It's always a really good opportunity to say what you feel about what might be happening in the national picture. Of course, it's the first time that people are going to be voting since the Ukraine war, since the cost of living crisis started, and I think that's really going to have a massive impact. And so yesterday I was out here in Belper, one of the larger towns in the Amber Valley, speaking to people about how they might plan on voting and whether the bigger parties, the national parties, are going to have an impact on how they might vote this time around.
I've already done postal vote, and I voted Green for this because they do a lot in Duffield Green. They've done a lot of things, you know, that are suitable for older people.
We think that probably Labour's the only people that just generally are the big people to go against the Tories. But Green is definitely something that we think is more the way to go. But it's whether generally we're always thinking, do we tactically vote or do we vote with what we really believe?
I still think, despite all the stories that's been going on about this and everything, I still think he's done an amazing job for us. He's had to deal with everything that's gone off through COVID and then the Ukraine war and everything, and I think he's been there for us all the way through and through. Yes, he's made mistakes, but I think any party in that position would have made mistakes. So, and as far as local councils go, again, I don't see any issues with it. I'm happy with the decisions they made for us.
I think I'm going to go for the Green Party this time. Mainly because I've had enough of Labour and the Conservatives. I think they just all chat rubbish, don't they? I've had enough of them.
The way I see it, even if Labour were in charge, I don't know if they would have done any better than the Conservatives anyway.
No, I'm not planning on voting at all. I don't think it really matters at this minute in time who we vote for, who's in power. We're still going to be in the same position either way.
Because I've been a lifelong Conservative voter. In fact, I even stood for to be the MP of an area not so far around here. Came second, I didn't get it, but I think they've completely lost the plot, to be honest. Absolutely lost the plot. So they won't be getting my vote this time around.
I'm trying to vote the best vote for Belper, but you know what? I also want to give the major parties a good spanking. I like generally the Green ideas, but I don't like the woke aspect of the Green Party. In some ways, it seems to me the woke side of the Labour Party under a new name. I like the Labour Party's social policies, but I don't like their wokeness. I like the Tory Party's anti-wokeness, if you like.
If something big is happening locally, then you've got a chance to do something about it. But if you look at Amber Valley and it's, Conservative, Labour, etc. It doesn't matter who's in, we're more or less doing the same thing.
Now, Amber Valley currently is a Conservative-controlled area, but Labour have been in power many times over the last 20 years, so it'll be really interesting to see what might happen there. There are also Greens standing and Lib Dems standing for just about every seat in this particular area. There are, of course, information as to all of the candidates on the Amber Valley website, and polls tomorrow open from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m.
Well, what interests a young man like you? What would motivate you to go and cast your vote for a local council election? Isabel and I were talking about things here, which we'll share with you in a minute. But it can be quite small. It can be quite silly. It seems quite small, but it's not. I mean, we were talking about dog filing. We were talking about litter. We're talking about fly tipping. We're talking about. I just think the appearance of a town or a city is very, very important, because if it looks rubbish and there's graffiti everywhere and there's dog poo and whatever, I think people don't respect it, and then it's a downward spiral. Is there anything that would just get you, Will, that you think's important that local politicians should consider wherever you live?
Yes, of course. I think one of the things that I've really noticed from coming here to Belper is, in some aspects, people being proud of their town, being proud of the area that they come from, the area that they live in, whether it's for permanent residency or if it's for just coming here on the bus to work. So I think having that bit of a pride in your local area is something that really matters. I don't know if you can see behind me, but there are lots of English flags as well as GB flags, and it's really nice to come into an area that's, apart from being proud of Belper, proud of Derbyshire, really proud of the country as well. So wherever you are, I think having that pride in a local area is something that matters to a lot of different people.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Thank you. And I suppose what Will's sort of getting across there is sometimes you think you see your neighbourhood or your town or your high street, whatever, a bit of as a reflection of your own home. Yeah. And if you're proud of your own home and your own garden or your own yard or whatever it happens to be, you probably want to see that in the area around you.
Yeah, it's just a feel-good, isn't it? If
Yeah.
you like where you live, it makes you want to stay, it makes you want to spend money there, it makes you want to invite people there, and it just...
But, you know, councils will say, and they're under huge pressure, and they'll say, we haven't got the money for that. We haven't got the money to clear up and plant flower beds and on the local roundabout or whatever it is. But I do think the appearance, as Will alluded to there, is very, very important, because if it's a bad appearance, as I say, downward spiral. Yeah. Just to say that candidates from 4 parties, Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dems and Green, are all running in Amber Valley.
Yeah. Coming up, the papers today will be joined by the former Conservative Minister under Thatcher and Major David Mellor, and we'll be joined by the broadcaster Claire Muldoon.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
OK, it's 6:37, time to go through your morning newspapers today, joined by the broadcaster Claire Muldoon and the former Conservative Minister David Mellor. Welcome to the programme, both of
Morning.
you. David, should we start talking about the interview gaffes, allegedly, as reported in The Guardian? Johnson under pressure, they're saying.
Yes, I mean, obviously The Guardian won't say anything that's particularly good about Boris. The real issue, though, is does Boris deserve anything particularly good to be said about him? And there is a sense that any hope that Boris had that having a good war, and he is having a good war in terms of his support for Ukraine and the things he's said and the things he's done, is not actually helping him on the domestic front. And what's interesting about this Guardian piece are some of the quotes. OK, the people who are saying these awful things about Boris are not named, but they are obviously, I rely on The Guardian's journalism, they are actually real people with real opinions that actually are causing a good deal of trouble. And, for instance, just trying to check what he is understood that they're looking at. Yes, where are we? Yeah, we're looking at. Yes.
You're right there, David.
Yeah, no, it's actually quite difficult to find one's way around the. But what they're really saying is, for instance, a Tory MP in Monmouthshire, the anger is now a permanent feature. We can, in a sense, get away with it this time because he's not on the ballot paper. But this is definitely going to be held against us at a general election.
He's not on the ballot paper. It's not a referendum on his premiership. It's not a referendum on Keir Starmer either. Isn't it supposed to be about local issues? Are we in the media or in the newspapers? Are they perhaps making this more about Boris than it deserves to be?
No, because it always is. It always is. And I think, what we're trying to do is, like a good chess player, we're trying to play the next move after the one that we're playing at the moment. Now, what's going to happen on Friday? The Tories stand every prospect of losing, they say, 550, 600 seats, which out of 4,000 odd that are being fought, it's not one of the biggest local elections this year. It's going to be very difficult. The Tories' resident pollster is quoted in a number of the papers, Rob Hayward, used to be an MP alongside me, 250 to 350 thinks they'll lose. But the point is, what Tory MPs will be looking at, and quite a lot, I suspect, of very disillusioned ex-ministers, is what hope does Boris have of redeeming himself? That Boris is in deep doo-doo, no one, including Boris himself, can deny. The question is, do the Tories believe he can heave himself out of deep doo-doo? Because the trouble for Boris is that people don't actually like him within the parliamentary party. They tolerate him because they see him as a winner. But is he any longer a winner? I think Thursday night will give us a clue as to that.
I think you said something key there, David, and as did you, Isabel, about the elections not being, a referendum or a popularity vote on Boris himself per se. However, I think the electorate, we, the people, are actually saying, well, actually, no, it's not. Well, it is, because it is about Boris. And I think a lot of people will be going to the polls thinking, well, he's not doing what he said he was going to do. Lots of things haven't happened. Partygate, Beergate, everything's going to come across. And yet there's 91 constituents that don't have any opposition, whether that be Labour or Conservative. Politics in this country, I'm afraid to say, is completely and utterly thrown out of the water. We're in a terrible state of affairs.
Seems to be one of the biggest crimes that the Prime Minister made yesterday was not knowing who Lorraine Kelly was. Yeah, he's being judged on that.
Well, she gets 1 million viewers. And, does that make him out of touch if he doesn't know? I mean, you'd be a bit disappointed if he was sitting at home watching Lorraine.
I mean, even if he doesn't watch her, he should know who she is.
Yes.
Even I know who she is, and I'm way out of touch with everything, as was obvious from my stumblebum performance just then. But
it was very entertaining. It was very entertaining. It was very, very good to watch.
But you see, Boris has shown me that to be a stumblebum can be entertaining, and I'm modelling myself.
Yes. OK, Claire, we're going to the Rwanda migrant plan.
Yep.
This is front page of the I newspaper. They're saying it is in chaos.
Well, it is in chaos. It's an absolute disarray. And where the I have sourced it straight from Border Force, and they are non-partisan, completely and utterly, dealing with this every single day of the week. And they're saying that the head, Lucy Morton, the Border Force Union, ICU, said the only impact announced plans have had is to increase the numbers seeking to make this crossing, not deter them. And that's because they've got the human traffickers that are saying, come over to the UK before the law changes, or you better come over now, the seas are calmer, let's do this and let's get here before things change.
So do you believe that if and when things change, that will be the deterrent?
I'm not sure it actually will be the deterrent because people are trying to move across. Since the start of 2022, 7,240 people have reached the UK. That's more than 500 came in the last 2 days. This is more than 3 times the numbers recorded for the same period in 2021 and more than 7 times, we were during the pandemic in 2020. However, people are still moving over. There is still this business model of human trafficking. Come to the land of milk and honey.
Yes.
Come here. We will get you here. We'll get you here safely. When you're here, it'll be brilliant.
Yeah. And David, would that be reflected in the local elections tomorrow? Does that put a strain on local authority budgets and
Yeah, it certainly does. But I think what puts a strain on the voters is the sense that this is a totally incompetent government. I mean, the Tories, you see, people didn't used to like the Tories. I mean, when I was around under Margaret Thatcher, I don't think people particularly liked us, but they respected us, quite a number of them, and thought we were quite good at what we were doing. We now have a situation where opinion polls are showing the Labour Party having a higher credibility on the economy than the Tories. That was an unprecedented thing.
TV News viewers and listeners shouting at their tellies and disagreeing. They love Boris. They see him as the man who brought them Brexit. They see him as the man who got us out of lockdown before anyone else. He did the successful vaccine rollout. He's behind a very fast economy recovery. And people are very loyal to him. They don't forget that. And of course, don't forget, as a mayor, he won in what is traditionally very much a Labour city.
No, a good effort. 8 out of 10 tries hard, I certainly think. No, but look, the reality is there comes a moment, and it's true, Boris is a comedian, he's an entertainer, but, even great entertainers, the public get fed up with them. They've heard the jokes before, they get fed up. And I think Boris is trespassing on people's good nature by being, he will not read his briefs, so he always appears... To be fumbling.
Making it up on the hoof.
Do you think is that a deliberate tactic to make him seem such a buffoon that is quite endearing in some ways? Is it a tactic?
Well, if you like that kind of thing.
Well, personally, I don't, but I'm just wondering why he's doing it.
But it's a terrible mess for the Tories because if they lose... Look, they had the chance, Tory MPs had the chance to move on. They could have used Ukraine as a reason... and also the problems over cost of living, etc., to move away from Partygate. Partygate hangs around 2 years on because it sums up what a lot of people feel about Boris,
but
and that is he's an irresponsible person.
Does that make Keir Starmer an irresponsible person? I mean, David, you go to the Daily Mail front page of what they're talking about Beergate.
Yes. Well, I mean, the problem with politicians having a go at other people's private lives is that they then get the blowback on themselves. And by the way, that has changed. When I went through my traumas in 1992, relatively small beer compared to all the expenses fiddling that goes on today, not a single Labour MP went public on criticising me, and not a single person referred me to any... There was no basis for doing so. It was just one of those things that happened. And that was because, generally speaking, members of Parliament had a feeling that there was no point in kicking other people for perceived misdeeds in their private lives because we are all guilty as a psychiatrist.
People in glass houses.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing is that Keir Starmer cannot give an adequate explanation as to why he had some takeout curry somewhere, I think it was somewhere in the north of England. And for a man who has earned his living as a lawyer... The lawyers are thought to be glib, superficial, but quite... coherent. I've always modelled myself on that idea, and he isn't very coherent, is he?
He always looks frightened of slipping up.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, also that would be your lawyer's advice, wouldn't it? Not to say anything if you can avoid it when
Yes.
you're in hot water. So who knows?
But it's not good in the theatre or the court
It's
of
not
public
good for
opinion.
television cameras,
No.
is it? Doesn't give us
It's
the
not a good
sound bite
optic.
that we want.
Yeah, as we would say.
Claire, let's talk about the optics coming out of the United States. This huge upset going on. Both sides so polarised in the abortion debate, known as Roe versus Wade. This has been covered in the Daily Mail, and America, as it says, convulsed after shock abortion. Leaked document.
Well, we must be careful here because it's not ruled yet. It's a leaked document over SCOTUS, which is the Senate Court of the United States of America. Roe versus Wade was an institutional, constitutional change-up, no doubt about it, back in the 1970s in Texas, where a woman took the Texas governor to court because she wanted an abortion, she wanted to get rid of the child that she had, and abortion at that time was legal for women whose lives were in danger or whose child would be malfully deformed. However, this case then went on to change practically every single state of America.
Yes,
now, the optic that people are looking at this through, the lens that they're looking at this through, is very much women's choice, women's right. It's a very emotive issue to say that, notwithstanding the fact of the definition of women in this country, but globally as well. But if we look at Roe versus Wade being, you know, women's choice, not necessarily pro-life, the same people the Liberals who still go for abortion would want to end the death penalty, but also still want to end guns or whatever. So you cannot have this debate, an isolated debate on this, and not discuss the optics and the panorama and the vista concerning everything else.
I mean, this is not a male thing, but I do actually agree with what's been said. And I think this is, one of the papers says that this is Trump's last gift to the Republican Party, making the women of America get up in arms because of some of the dumbbells that he has put into the Supreme Court, who, you know, they're tested on ideology rather than their knowledge of the law. I just don't think you can roll the clock back on something as fundamental to a woman's rights as abortion. And I think this has thrown a lifeline to Biden. And the Republican Party is stupid.
You use the word lifeline. It's not giving the lifeline to the unborn child that should be the innocent in all of this. I mean, it's not necessarily women's rights all the time. If you want to give a lifeline, surely the life should start from conception and go through full term.
But it gives a woman the right within her own moral or religious confines to decide. It's taking that away. What I'm saying is, and the opposition is saying that a woman should decide herself according to her own moral ruling.
That was certainly, that was certainly
clumsy
language by me, and I'm sorry for that. But I think that one always assumes that abortion law is predicated on early abortions and so on. But what these people are against is abortion per se, and I just don't think that's any longer credible.
Well, guys, we're going to move on and we're going to talk about that right now. David and Claire will be back in 40 minutes' time.
Yeah, so according to a leaked Supreme Court document that we've just been discussing, the country's top court is set to possibly overturn a piece of 1973, a ruling from 1973 when abortion was legalised nationwide. Well, there are fears the practice could now be banned in almost half of the US states, a move that could see some 36 million women lose access to abortions. Well, we can speak now to Conservative political commentator Scotty Nell, who joins us from Nashville. Very good morning to you. Look, to people at home, first of all, can you just explain to us where we're here used to abortion law? That isn't what exists in the United States. It's a verdict on a court ruling that was some 40, 50 years ago. Roe versus Wade. Tell us all about it.
Well, what Roe versus Wade did, it took the power from the states and put it in the federal government. You know, our Constitution has the 10th Amendment that if it was not specifically laid out when the Founding Fathers created our Constitution, the power goes to the states, as in the case of abortions. Roe versus Wade took that power from the states and made it a federal issue that when the rule was made, it was from sea to shining sea. But that is not exactly how our Founding Fathers wanted. And we're talking about this issue but other issues as well. This is where we have the debate concerning necessarily interstate commerce, gun rights, even LGBTQ rights have come up under this debate since they were not originally laid out by the founding fathers. So all Roe versus Wade took that power away from the states. And with this leaked document, it does not abolish abortion in the United States. What it does, though, is put that power back into the state's choice and into their state legislatures to make the decision for their own community.
But it's not, looking at it from the UK, it's a very strange way to protect rights, isn't it? To have it in a sort of ruling that can be meddled with by the judiciary in this way. I mean, we very much have a legislature that's separate from that. And people would say, would it not just be more simple just to have it codified and set in legislation?
Well, I don't think this is the first time the UK has looked at actions in the US and kind of scratched their head and thought it was a little weird what we were doing or how our government was set up. But that's what makes us the teenagers on the international scene. And you're right from that perspective, except for the fact that you cannot compare, and just like you can't compare certain regions within the UK and say they're exactly the same, you cannot compare the community of maybe New York State, a blue state, or California, and say it has the same type of community and principles, whether we're talking about economically, socially, or even diplomatically, that a state like Florida or Texas or even Tennessee, where I am, and that there's different communities that reside in those states, hence why we have red and blue states. And all this is doing, and all that the SCOTUS leaked memo has proven, is that this SCOTUS, as it stands right now, wants to start returning that power back to the states, which is a very conservative principle and one that Donald Trump ran on. And your intro was correct. This would be one of those last legacies, probably his strongest legacy, that he would do in fulfilling a campaign promise by returning the power.
Well, you think it would be one of his strongest legacies? I mean, a lot of people are saying it's handing a gift to President Biden, because it's just, I mean, apparently I was hearing Senator Warren claiming 69% of Americans are opposed to removing abortion rights.
Well, that's what's interesting about this, is the timing of this. I mean, 24-hour news cycle ago, this was not on our radar. There are lots of things here in the United States that we're dealing with. And then just out of the blue, a vote that took place, a part of the SCOTUS back in January and February, was leaked out. And now all of a sudden, this is the dominating conversation. So it's either happened for one of two reasons. It's happened so that there could be so much public outcry at this decision and the possibility that it could take, that it's hoping this will put pressure on the SCOTUSes to change their mind or not make the vote itself. Or when we're talking about, because we are in an election year and magically all of these things happen, usually become very active in the United States during election year, this is actually going to motivate some of those socially voters, social standard voters, to get up and get involved. But we're still 8 months out from our November election, so I don't know if this is necessarily meant to get that ball rolling in a very blue Democratic kind of bored electorate right now. I don't know if it's a little bit too early to start playing that card.
Well, it's certainly been unprecedented for this kind of document to be leaked, and as you say, for this row to just explode, and lots of people scratching their heads about it. And I think Hillary Clinton said that this would be a direct assault on the dignity, rights and lives of women, not to mention decades of already settled law. It's the fact of going back in time. But look, we're out of time. Scotty, Nell Hughes, lovely to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there's the view, there's the voice stateside. You have your say. Tweet us at GB News and email us on some address that I can never remember.
gbnews@gbnews.uk.
How did you know that?
I just remembered.
Just
I had a second longer than you.
It's a tongue twister. See, what happens is I have notices pinned up around this studio and then they move mysteriously. I think there's poltergeists or something in the studio that just move things disappear.
Yeah, steal the tissues as well.
Yes, all sorts of things. Guys, that's an issue. Does it matter to you?
Yeah,
do you want to say on it?
About that, because we do know that when abortion rights are taken away, women still continue to get abortions, but usually in unsafe circumstances. What do you think about it? All get involved in the debate this morning.
We're going to take a break and we're going to have more on the local elections and all the other news top of the hour. Hope you can stay with us.
Good morning, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's a bit dull and damp out there first thing, but it will very gradually brighten up, albeit with some heavy showers later, and it's a warmer day compared to the last few days, particularly towards the east. High pressure is towards the southwest of the UK. Around the top of that high, weather fronts are toppling in, and these are generally weak affairs, but, well, they're bringing an awful lot of cloud and some outbreaks of rain. The rain tending to be on and off, mostly it's light, but a few moderate bursts in there, and they are spreading northwest to southeast across the country during the morning. By the afternoon, the cloud lifts a little, some breaks developing, but actually I think a lot of places will keep the cloud cover and heavy showers will form. Hail and thunder possible in some of the livelier downpours, but away from the showers, actually 17, 18 Celsius possible in, well, eastern Scotland, central and eastern England, so it's going to be feeling a bit warmer. But those heavy showers, of course, will be pretty lively in places, especially towards central and eastern parts of the UK. They ease away overnight, clear spells for many, but cloudier for Scotland, for Northern Ireland as well, with some outbreaks of rain in the far northwest. 8 to 10 Celsius typically as we wake up on Thursday, and plenty of sunshine to greet us across much of England and Wales. Eastern Scotland generally bright as well. Western Scotland, Northern Ireland seeing cloud and some outbreaks of mostly light rain. That turns more showery into the afternoon. 1 or 2 showers possible for Western England and Wales as well. But actually a good deal of dry and bright weather, especially towards the southeast, where somewhere like London could get 20 or 21 Celsius, mid to high teens generally elsewhere. The warmth stays with us on Friday and into the weekend. Some outbreaks of rain or showers on Friday, but drier and brighter for the vast majority on Saturday and Sunday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Party leaders make their pitch to the public on the last day of campaigning before polls open in the local elections.
Good to see you wherever you're watching or listening. Just after 7 o'clock, Wednesday, the 4th of May. Breakfast on GB News being served up to you by Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Party leaders are due to visit key electoral battlegrounds today, 24 hours ahead of the polls opening in the local elections.
The Prime Minister expected to visit Hampshire today. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, he will be campaigning in Wakefield, with the cost of living likely to be the biggest issue on the agenda.
In Ukraine, President Zelensky used his latest national address to thank Prime Minister Boris Johnson for his important words after an address to the Ukrainian parliament yesterday. Zelensky also appealed for a ceasefire to allow for more evacuations from the Mariupol steel plant.
And, we appeal for what you have to say, and let's go through what you're saying so far this morning. Neil in Worcester, I'll not be voting because basically Neil's saying since lockdown he's had to use most of his savings getting private health care. Richard says the word that comes to mind about the public's attitude to these elections is apathy.
John says, I've decided to vote just because I've always seen voting as a privilege. And Mark in Oxford says here in East Oxford seats, the topic of the election is about local traffic neighbourhoods. Independent parties are against them.
It's interesting, I think this refers to there's a lot of traffic calming measures going on.
20-mile-an-hour zones.
And people, there are obstacles put up to stop certain streets being used as, what are they called? Rat
runs?
Rat runs, yeah. Through. So apparently, so these restrict people who live in these streets greatly. It may curtail the traffic, but it curtails people's lives as well. So we're just trying to say what matters to you, be it litter, be it potholes, be it, I don't know what else the council controls, but what do you think they should control? So there you go. It's GB Views at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News.
So to our top story then, and it is the last day of campaigning before polls open in the local elections tomorrow, with the results likely to influence the political futures of the major party leaders.
Well, our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, is in Sunderland to give us a test of the waters there. Darren.
Yeah, very good morning, Eamonn. Millions of people going to the polls right around the country, in England, Scotland and Wales in local elections, and of course in Northern Ireland as well, to try and elect a new assembly there. Council elections, do they matter? Well, they matter if you're concerned about things like potholes, about bin collections, about how much council tax you pay, and in different parts of the country, big, massive local issues do matter. You rightly pointed out there, for example, lots of councils imposed speedy limits in certain sections of towns and cities that anger people. Bus services, for example, also sometimes controlled by councils. So these are really important local issues that genuinely actually affect your day-to-day life in many, many ways. But also there is a sense that lots of people vote on those big national issues as well. And you're right in pointing out that the cost of living crisis, rising inflation, rising taxes are the heart of what many in this campaign will fear will influence people's votes, or hope it will as well. Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, making that pledge that he thinks the national insurance rise is the wrong tax at the wrong time, and that Labour would put on a windfall tax on the big energy companies to try and bring down people's heating costs. As for the Conservative Party, well, they're actually trying to focus in many degrees on the local issues. They argue that actually Conservative-run councils are better run and that they on the whole have lower council tax. But in the end, it's going to be a bit of both, isn't it, really, when people do turn out tomorrow? Some people will vote on local issues, some people will vote for the party they always do, some will vote on those big national issues. In the end, how's it going to play out? Well, for the Labour Party, they need to kind of do well. They need to pick up council seats, particularly in areas like here in Sunderland. They need to ensure they win back some of those voters that switched to the Conservative Party a couple of years' time, the so-called Red Wall voters. And Eamonn and Isabel, I'm going to chuck another term at you now. Blue Wall voters. Who are Blue Wall voters? People in the south of England who've traditionally voted for the Conservative Party. I think there's a fear at Conservative HQ that some of them, this time round, could switch to the Lib Dems in many parts of southern England. And that is where I think the Conservatives are concerned they could lose seats tomorrow, is in traditional Conservative strongholds where they're pretty unhappy with the government for various reasons, and they could switch not necessarily to Labour but actually back to the Lib Dems like they did many, many years ago.
In this morning saying that they won't bother voting at all. Lots of people saying they feel politically homeless, others just saying that they're a bit turned off by some of the I don't know whether you want to call it sleazegate, partygate, beergate, whatever it is going on in politics at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's always pretty difficult, isn't it, to get people to come out and vote in local elections. The turnout is always substantially down on what you'd normally see in a general election. Let's be frank, here in Sunderland, are people on Friday morning going to be waking up really concerned about who's running the local council, or they're going to be more concerned about how well they're going to do against Sheffield Wednesday on Friday night? And I hope you're kind of slightly impressed by my football knowledge, given that normally it's not great. Yes, of course they're going to be more concerned about probably the football. And I think the narrative on Friday could well be written. The apathy is going to be a big winner, that lots of people just aren't bothered to turn out, not least of all because people are pretty disenfranchised by politics at the moment. You're right in pointing out Partygate. Some of these allegations at Westminster has not helped that. And, you know, in many ways that's a bad thing, because as I say, local councils do matter to your everyday life. But in the end, in mid-term, many people just simply cannot be bothered. Are the Conservative Party concerned about that? They are, because I think it's their supporters in the end who may well stay at home. They are projected to lose hundreds of council seats. It's how many they lose, I think, will be the main driver of the news agenda on Friday, about whether the pressure's really on Boris Johnson, or indeed conversely, and this is also possible, and let's not forget this, on Keir Starmer, because Keir Starmer needs a good election in order for him to say, well, you know what, we're on the path to victory for the next general election, which is a couple of years' time away.
OK, well, right now, Darren, thank you very much indeed for that. Looks like a good morning in Sunderland. Now we're going to our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, who's live from Belper in Derbyshire. He looks like Harry Potter this morning, doesn't he? I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, what am I looking at? You're like those glasses.
Oh,
Anyway, Will, look, the thing is, you're out there and you're trying to find out what really matters to people, what is going to get them voting or not voting. What have you found out, my friend?
Good morning. Just on the glasses, somebody said on a Twitter comment that how does this man look 50 years old and also 12 years old at the same time, which I thought was actually quite a good one. So I gave them a like on that one. But of course, in Belper, it's one of the larger towns here in Amber Valley, along with Alfreton and Ripley. It's a population of around 130,000 people, but not everybody's going to be voting. The Amber Valley is one of those slightly awkward places where they elect councillors by a third. Research shows that that is changing in the near future. But of course, this is one of those areas where it's got a bit of a coal mining history, but it tends to go towards the Conservatives. Of course, in the last 20 years, though, Labour has had power, but right now it is a Conservative-controlled council. There's also a Green councillor as well as another councillor as well at the moment. But from what I've been hearing from people, it really is that national picture. It really is the national politics that is influencing people. Sure, you do have conversations around things like bins, planning applications, environmental issues in the local area, but it does seem to be whether people care or don't care about what's been going on with the cost of living crisis, Ukraine, and of course Partygate. So yesterday I was out in Belper speaking to people about what does matter to them and whether it is a local election or a national election in all but name.
I've already done postal vote, and I voted Green for this because they do a lot in Duffield to Green. They've done a lot of things, you know, that are suitable for older people.
We think that probably Labour's the only people that just generally are the big people to go against the Tories. But Green is definitely something that we think is more the way to go. But it's whether generally we're always thinking, do we tactically vote or do we vote with what we really believe?
I still think, you know, despite all the stories that's been going on about Boris and everything, I still think he's done an amazing job for us. He's had to deal with everything that's gone off through COVID and then the Ukraine war and everything, and I think he's been there for us all the way through and through. Yes, he's made mistakes, but I think any party in that position would have made mistakes. So, you know, and as far as local councils go, again, you know, I don't see any issues with it. I'm happy with the decisions they've made for us.
I think I'm going to go for the Green Party this time. Mainly because I've had enough of Labour and the Conservatives. I think they just all chat rubbish, don't they? I've had enough of them.
The way I see it, even if Labour were in charge, I don't know if they would have done any better than the Conservatives anyway.
No, I'm not planning on voting at all. I don't think it really matters at this minute in time who we vote for, who's in power. We're still going to be in the same position either way.
Because I've been a lifelong Conservative voter. In fact, I even stood for to be the MP of an area not so far around here. Came second, I didn't get it, but I think they've completely lost the plot, to be honest. Absolutely lost the plot. So they won't be getting my vote this time around.
I'm trying to vote the best vote for Belper, but you know what? I also want to give the major parties a good spanking. I like generally the Green ideas, but I don't like the woke aspect of the Green Party. In some ways, it seems to me the woke side of the Labour Party under a new name. I like the Labour Party's social policies, but I don't like their wokeness. I like the Tory Party's anti-wokeness, if you like.
If something big is happening locally, then you've got a chance to do something about it. But if you look at Amber Valley and it's, you know, Conservative, Labour, etc., it doesn't matter who's in, they're more or less doing the same thing.
Of course, more information can be found about the different candidates, the different parties that are standing in different wards here in Amber Valley, on the Amber Valley Borough Council website. It's approximately just gone 7 o'clock, so around 24 hours until the polls open. Let's hope that this rain is gone, so maybe more people do come out and vote, because we do know, as Darren just said before, traditionally local elections do see a much lower turnout than the national ones.
Not for our reporters. Look at you out there in that rain.
But it's a pretty street. It makes the difference, Will, with the trees behind you.
Yeah, it's beautiful around here, really nice. They've got buses and cars can only come through here at a certain time in the day, and then it becomes pretty much completely pedestrianised, except for the occasional bus that comes through. So it's a really nice kind of relaxing atmosphere, and people do seem to be really happy to live in this part of the world.
OK, thank you very much indeed. We were talking, and Will was talking to people, what will get them out to vote. And I should say, it's an interesting thing, Isabel's dad, for many years, was a local councillor.
Yeah, we used to get phone calls to Councillor Webster most days, a few times a day, asking for my dad. And he worked as a partner in an architect's practice in London, and then would commute back home to our house in Surrey, and then go to council meetings late into the evening. Every evening. And I really always just have a lot of respect for councillors, because I realise how much work they do in their own time for the community-spirited, you know, work. And you know, got involved in lots of elections as a child, got sent out leafleting, and we used to have sort of, I don't know what you call them, like nerve centres on the day of polling, where they would go and work out who's voted and who hasn't. We'd go and canvass them, and it was, you know,
It's a
a really
big
impressive
commitment.
operation.
And did he feel he could make a difference, or did make a difference?
Oh, I don't need to have to ask him. I mean, I was really little. It was sort of, I was under 10 years old, but I know that he doesn't do it anymore, but he enjoyed it at the time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Dog poo.
Hate it.
Yeah.
That's the big issue where I live.
Oh, I think
Yeah.
it should be a big issue.
Yeah.
But then, you know, it's terrible that people have to legislate against it, and why just, you know, there are these people who just feel they don't want to clean up
I think
after
the problem
them.
is how do you police it? Because you can't. People go out in the dead of night and creep around in the dark, and you just can't police it. And there's no sort of magic fairy going around scooping it up. So
No, I always feel for the
crazy.
people who do have to empty the dog poo bins and scoop it up off the pavements and things, it's awful. And the worst thing of all is the people who poo into, no, they don't poo into, their dogs poo in, or they put their dog's poo into the dog poo bag, and then they throw it up on a tree.
Oh, I know. Isn't that ridiculous?
That's
you
seriously
plastic
sick.
bags swinging from trees. Just let the poo rot if you can.
Yeah, it's like a little decoration. It's like when autumn comes and the leaves fall, then you're left with all these poo bags hanging on a tree.
And that's when you just think we're all a bit messed up. Society is a bit messed up, isn't it? People
Messed up, truly.
grow up. doggy
7:15. Thanks very much for your company. Let's go back to Ukraine and talk about what's happening there. Day 70, would you believe, of the invasion. And the President Zelensky has confirmed 156 people have been successfully evacuated from the steel plant in Mariupol. Speaking in his daily national address, he added that a ceasefire was needed in order to make the humanitarian corridor work.
Well, President Zelensky also thanked Boris Johnson for his warm, friendly, powerful and sincere gesture as the Prime Minister announced an extra £300 million in aid to Ukraine.
Well, let's get more reaction now from Ukrainian MP Lesia Vasylenko. Good morning to you, sir.
Hello.
What about yesterday? What was the atmosphere like in the chamber yesterday, listening to Boris Johnson?
we're very thankful for all support we are receiving from the United Kingdom, and we're thankful to Prime Minister Boris Johnson for the leadership he shows in support of Ukraine. And yesterday's speech was also important, not just by concrete things you already mentioned. There's military aid, which includes anti-artillery radars, missiles, armored vehicles. But for the main message he sent to us, that he is sure that Ukraine will win. That was said by him, and that the United Kingdom will be with Ukraine till the victorious end. That is important for us. We are thankful for this. I was just listening, 5-7 minutes to your program, and I want to say the truth. I feel envy that people are discussing, local councils and what will be the tax and things like this, and laughing from politics and things like this. Unfortunately, in our country now we have a situation when we are at existential threat, to be or not to be. This night again, the railway infrastructure throughout the whole country was attacked by Russian missiles. Again, we have an attack against Mariupol, Azovstal, you already mentioned. Again and again, we have these awful barbaric things, and it's so hard to understand and to accept that in the middle of 21st century, in the middle of Europe, while like most countries are living normal, absolutely normal life, and our country is in a nightmare, in the hell, and we have not deserved it in any way. We have not attacked anybody. We are probably the most peaceful nation on this planet.
You know, I used to, I'm from Northern Ireland, I'm from Belfast, and I remember as a child when civil unrest was so bad, obviously terribly bad, nothing compared to obviously what's going on in your country, but awfully bad. And as a child I used to think, why are we different from other parts of the United Kingdom or other parts of Ireland where this normality reigns? And it didn't reign in Belfast. Do you ever think, Mr. Goncharenko, that normality will ever return? Do you ever, you must pinch yourself and you must think, why, 3 months ago, all of this was normal and you were talking about dogs pooing on the street and that was, the sort of things that you were talking about. And now, what would you give to be able to have that in your inbox now as the biggest problem you had to deal with? It's so sad, and we do feel for you. Do you have any sense that normality could ever return?
Yes, without hope you can't live. So I'm sure, and I agree with Prime Minister Johnson, that we will win and normality will come back. Certainly after the first question is victory. The second question is to rebuild the country after this awful devastation. Mariupol, a 500,000 population city, is just flattened. It's destroyed to rubles, and that is something we will need to deal with. But yes, I believe that normality will come back, like always it happens after the war. But what I really want, just not to allow this to go ahead. It's like, Putin and all this Russian empire, they are like a cancer. They are just spreading and spreading, attacking you and you. There was Georgia, then Moldova, Syria, other countries. Salisbury, they attacked in the UK, other places. Now there's an awful attack against Ukraine. And I want the world to be free of this. And I understand that the only way to do it is to show for the whole planet, because there are other tyrants and dictators, not only Putin on the planet, that the destiny of Putin will be awful because what he did. And that is the only way. So we need to unite the free world, and we need to stop aggressors like him. We need to make lessons from history of Second World War and to stop everything before it will make a huge catastrophe. And I hope we will do it this time.
We hope you do. It's so very sad, so heartfelt listening to you. Thanks for your take, being inside the chamber.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much indeed. Oleksiy Goncharenko there, who is a Ukrainian MP.
Now, millions of homes have been pushed into higher stamp duty brackets by the pandemic.
Surging house prices during the lockdowns has seen the average house price increase by around £29,000 in the past 2 years.
Well, joining us now to discuss this and all the other economics news of the day is our very own economics and business editor, Liam Halligan. Look, I suppose on the one hand, lots of people seeing their house value go up, but the bad side to that is that they fall into this higher stamp duty bracket.
That's right, Isabel. Home ownership has gone down over recent years. It's now below the average of the EU countries here in the UK. So we're not really a nation of homeowners in the sense that we used to be. And a lot of that home ownership is among people who are 50 and pensioners. And the younger generation now, those between 25 and 40, are less likely to own a home than they have been at any time since the 1930s. And what's happening now is that as house prices go up and people who own their own homes are cheering, there are many millions of people trying to get on the housing ladder, young and not so young adults, so-called first-time buyers, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for them. The average price of a first-time buyer's house is now £225,000. That's up about £30,000 over the last couple of years. And what's happening, Isabel, it's called fiscal drag. You have a tax threshold, which is when stamp duty kicks in on those houses and flats that we buy. That's set at £125,000. As the prices of the houses go up, more and more houses are dragged into that tax bracket. So more of us have to pay the stamp duty. And what's happened over the last couple of years is about 1.2 million more houses that could be bought by first-time buyers have been dragged into that stamp duty tax bracket, which means if you are trying to get on the housing ladder, you've got to find an extra £4,000.
Duty's got to be up there, hasn't it, with inheritance tax as one of the most unpopular taxes. And what's it even for? It just sort of deters people from moving, doesn't it?
It's a revenue-raising measure. I think I've written for many, many years that stamp duty should be completely scrapped. It's a tax on mobility, social mobility. It's a tax on aspiration. Certainly, that's my view. It actually imposes on a lot more people than inheritance tax. Actually, a minority of estates pay inheritance tax, though it is quite a big deal among a certain strata of conservative voters, which is why every now and then the Tories say that they're going to massively increase the inheritance tax threshold, though they never quite get round to it. But look, Boris Johnson knows that this housing issue is very, very serious. That's why they're now talking about expanding the right to buy. I covered that in my On the Money show yesterday. With people buying their own council houses. A lot of people don't like that because the number of council houses available for people on the waiting list then goes down. There's 1.2 million people on that waiting list. But it's, I've covered this issue for many, many years, Isabel, and it gets kind of annoying because politicians, they don't want to talk about housing at any time until it's just before an election because they know it's really important. We'll start talking about it and doing something about it when it isn't election time, because it's always up there among the list of issues which concern people. People want to buy their own homes. People want their kids to be able to buy their own homes. At the lower income scale, people want social housing for their kids, council housing for their kids, rather than this ghastly temporary accommodation that so many of our people are now in. It's a human tragedy, and it's a tragedy in terms of aspiration. And I so wish that politicians would focus more on issues that really matter to people, like housing.
Once again, Liam, you are on the money. Thank you very much indeed. And he will be with his own show On the Money, 1 p.m. today. Please tune in for that.
First of all, we're going to bring you the forecast. See you in a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It could have gone so wrong for Liverpool last night in the Champions League, and at one stage it looked as though it was going wrong. But they're in the final. They're in the final of the Champions League. Will Man City join them? Paul Coit now to look ahead and look back at Liverpool against Villarreal last night.
The yellow submarine sunk in the end. We were talking about the yellow submarine. So many people gave Villarreal a tough time when they played at Anfield. Oh, they're not good enough to play in the Champions League. They're not making an effort. And it's like, well, let's wait and see what happens when they get Liverpool at home. The first half was absolutely fantastic. They were all over them. You know, they were running, they were chasing, and the goals that they scored, and so they've gone 2-0 up. And Liverpool looked really
wobbly.
They did get wobbly.
I mean, they were still ahead. Obviously, that 2-0 win at home was there for them.
It was, but the thing is, at the point when it's 2-2, and it's all about momentum, and you're thinking then the momentum is with the home team.
Well, what made the difference then after half-time?
Oh, well, it's Ruben Diaz coming on made a difference, and also I think they exhausted themselves, to be honest with you. When you look at how Villarreal were, because they were pressing, they were chasing, they just looked great. And then half-time came, couldn't have come earlier, really, for Liverpool. And the thing that shows what a great side is, and this is when I'm watching this, and we even saw Real Madrid in the other semi-final, you can never count out a really good side, even when they're looking rattled. And then Andy Robertson said that this is what Jurgen Klopp spoke to them very calmly, said it was a very calm dressing room. They came out a different side, and then they played Villarreal off the park. But the Villarreal goalkeeper, now this is worth seeing. I mean, this guy, his name is Geronimo Rulli, which is probably the perfect name, because there was one point when you think he was just shouting, Geronimo, and just ran out halfway down the pitch and just missed the ball entirely. 2 goals went right through his legs. I mean, this guy, honestly, you wouldn't believe it's one of the worst goalkeepers you've ever seen. I mean, he was really, really bad. Well, so if you were Villarreal, you'd be looking at it and thinking, get rid of this guy and we'll get someone else in.
It could be an all-English final.
Of course it could.
It is Real Madrid tonight, Manchester City.
Manchester City and Liverpool are the best 2 club sides in the country, if in Europe and if not the world. They're that good. So I expect that Manchester City will get past Real Madrid. Again, we don't know, because it's the Bernabeu, and you don't know about Real Madrid because you'd think they were dead and buried halfway through the other game. The interesting thing is that they've actually said that, and I think Manchester City have been made aware, and I think they want Manchester City to give them a guard of honour to give Real Madrid a guard of honour as they walk on the pitch because Real Madrid have just won La Liga, which often happens with other clubs. I mean, what would you say?
I'd say no, because it's a big psychological advantage. It shows them too much respect.
Far too much respect. I know you have one, don't you, when you walk in every morning?
Yeah, but City don't play in the same league. I have one when I walk in.
I know, that's why I have to be in, Ali.
Yeah. Incidentally, does anybody know there watching or listening at home, what does Real mean in Spanish? I mean, so Villarreal, is it the real Villa? What is, so Real Madrid?
Yes.
What does Real mean? Does it mean real?
Ask me. I have absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
Real, it probably is the Real Madrid. And if you're Atletico, you'd be pretty cheesed off about that because you think, well, what about us?
My producer said you think it means royal.
Yes, it does. Yes,
Spanish for royal.
Yeah.
Royal Madrid.
Well,
Villa.
it's even more.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so look, what about Bournemouth last night? Automatic promotion. Yep. They secured it. They're back in the Premier League, as are Fulham.
Absolutely. So Fulham are up, Bournemouth are up, and these are two clubs where we never know whether they're going to be up and then they're going to be down the next season. Bournemouth, after they went down with Eddie Howe, I kind of got the impression that maybe they'd be down for quite some time. It's going to be tough to get back up. Few changes of managers. Scott Parker there, who was Fulham manager, of course, last year, taking them back up. So now we're looking at the playoffs. Nottingham Forest, who were originally, right at the start of the season, doing terribly, changed manager, and Steve Cooper came in. It wasn't enough. They couldn't get past Bournemouth. So they're in the playoffs. Huddersfield will be in the playoffs, and then we're looking at Sheffield United, Luton, who got tanked, of course, 7 the other day. So how they're going to actually raise their game. Middlesbrough and Millwall possibly in with the mix as well.
Well, I know the goalkeeping coach at Bournemouth, Rob Birch, and so very pleased for him and his family with this one. They'll be absolutely joyous.
Robert could get a job at Villarreal, I reckon.
Indeed.
If anybody needs a goalkeeping coach,
yes,
I think
you're
you should
quite right.
Tell him to get on the phone. That's Villaroyal, of course, I'm referring to.
Villaroyal, OK. Thanks, mate. Thank you very much indeed. Got to leave it there.
Stay with us. We're going to be talking to the broadcaster Campbell Doon and the former Conservative Minister, David Mellor. We've made sure he's got his glasses for this one. We'll see you in a few moments.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
At 25 to 8 is the time. The latest news situation is this.
Party leaders are out visiting key electoral battlegrounds today. It is the last day of campaigning ahead of voters going to the polls for tomorrow's local elections.
The Pope has asked for a meeting with President Putin in Moscow. He wants to try to stop the war in Ukraine, but hasn't yet received a response from the Kremlin.
Pro-choice demonstrators rallied in cities across the United States yesterday, demanding abortion rights be protected. It's after a Supreme Court document was leaked suggesting judges may vote to overturn Roe versus Wade, a 1973 decision which legalised abortion nationwide.
So, time now to go through the morning newspapers on this Wednesday morning. And joining us here in the studio, the broadcaster Claire Muldoon and Mr. David Mellor, the former politician. Now, what do you do now, David? People
Would
say,
you have been in the Gawkwood squad, as they say?
Probably.
I suspected as much.
Yeah.
I was just wanting that.
Yes, but when I was in politics, I was embarrassed. I used to tell people I was a pianist in a brothel. My mother was proud of me because of that.
Claire, where do you want to begin?
Let's go after that.
Let's start with delivery culture, OK? Set to make the UK the fat man of Europe.
Do you do it, Claire?
I do delivery... Well, yes, I do. I've got all the apps on the phone because I've got 4 kids, don't forget.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't ask if you had 4 kids. I just asked you, do you do it?
Is that a very leading question, Mr.
Well,
Holmes?
I do it far too often.
We're all guilty of it, I think.
I have never done it.
Oh, stop
But I nearly get run over by
Do you know what it is?
Get run over by their bikes on my little paths around my home.
And have you noticed that every one of the riders of those bikes are learners.
Yeah, but they never have to take a test. But no. I'm talking about the cyclists are almost worse than
Or at least they're better for the planet. I've been told, by the way, by some of our viewers this morning that this is a very urban issue, that people out in the sticks don't have this delivery.
Well, that's no, it's not true. That's insulting. That's like saying...
Do you not think they don't have it in Scotland?
They don't have it in rural areas, but to try and make out they don't have it in Aberdeen or they don't have it in Leeds or they don't have it in...
I didn't say it's not a London
you didn't, but I was watching the same comments coming in. Because people have as a view doesn't make it right. That's all.
Look, it does, whatever the viewers think, OK,
it's becoming easier to get stuff.
It's becoming much easier to use an app on your phone and get food delivered to your door.
But why not cook it? That's what I do.
Well, no, exactly. You do not cook it.
I absolutely
so when
do.
You were
I fancy myself
as
a bit of a chef.
When Margaret Thatcher let you out of her clutches and you were in the doing long days in office, what would you do? You go home and cook? Obviously.
No.
Well, there you go.
Because as you get older, you develop new skills.
Oh right.
Well,
okay.
So how often do you use these new skills then, David?
Huh?
Do you have an apron? Do you have a cookbook?
Yeah. I have a cookbook, and I also learn from others. I have learnt, since I've been living down in Dorset, how to cook venison. I've learnt there are different sorts of deer, and they require different sorts of cooking. So anybody who wants a little masterclass, I'm happily set up a stove over there and go for it.
Wow.
Why don't you start a supper club then? I think.
Well, my supper last night was I was about to do a Deliveroo, and I thought, Eamonn, stop it, wise up. So I went out and made myself something really healthy. And it was really after...
I dread to think what that was.
Listening to you this week, you talked about Welsh rarebit, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Well, I thought, right, so I'm going to put cheese on toast and I put little bits of ham through it.
First time I've known you make something in the kitchen.
Not healthy, David, but very, very nice. Very, very nice.
You cleared this up, though.
Huh?
I bet you're a really messy cook.
That's what my wife said as she was stropping up, but I cleaned that kitchen. That kitchen was, yes, it was...
When, this morning or last
No,
night?
last night. I did all that and that shut her up.
Can I just point out,
that.
This Deliveroo culture is making... Are we not already the fat man of Europe, by the way? Just on this.
Are you looking at me?
No, I'm just talking about the UK. Aren't we, after America, probably one of the fattest... Well, obviously America's not in Europe, but I'm just saying we sort of follow the American culture on
Well, we
weight.
do, and... Regardless of what you said, if you try and order at McDonald's, there's the thing that flags up and says, we do not deliver to schools, do you agree? Right. In Scotland, I was talking to the makeup girl. We were brought up in a horrendous diet. You could get anything deep fried. In fact, you still can, OK? This is not Deliveroo's fault. This is not going to stop children from having obesity, the crisis of obesity. This is not going to stop people eating fast food because you can get anything on Deliveroo. I think it's just it's just another headline coat hooked onto obesity. It's just in the study about teens who don't eat even one apple a day. It's been was set up by a university professor in Birmingham. The statistics from the West Midlands, where the children do not have a typically good diet anyway. It's a bit like Scotland. Most children do not eat 1 in 5 vegetable portions of fruit or vegetables a day. Deliveroo is not the problem here, I don't think. It's people's inability to cook properly, to cook off and indeed cook together as a family.
Delivery is slightly the problem.
Something boring like politics. I can't cope with all this exciting.
Let's move on to...
And also, I would just say, Claire, I mean, yesterday I was trying to get fruit from a supermarket and I looked up and I couldn't get it. So I declined the order, but the order tends to be fast convenience food, even from the supermarkets, are easy stuff. But anyway, point taken, point made. We do it all too much. David, I hope this is true. We go to the Telegraph, page 14, and they're saying Vladimir Putin's military cupboard is bare.
Yes, Richard Kemp is one of their analysts. And just to say, by the way, there he is, and above him is Philip Johnson. Yeah, one of them, people don't always comment on this, but I think it's worth commenting on. Very few people will read the papers today for the news because it's already hours out of date, even sometimes when it's online, and they will come here for the news. What you do get, though, in good newspapers is comment, and I think what Richard Kemp, who was, was a distinguished soldier,
he's a regular on our channel, actually.
Yeah, well, in that case, I'm glad to have to say something in favour of him. What he's really suggesting is the morale of Russian troops is low, that they don't want to risk their lives, they have no real conviction behind what they're trying to do. And, of course, what is bothering, I think, if I held any, still held, and thank goodness I don't, any ministerial responsibility, which is the real Russia? Is the real Russia as described in Richard Kemp's piece, which is that they don't have an army that is really fit for purpose? Or is the real Russia one where, someone like Putin, and God knows what an array of illnesses he has, even a suggestion that he had a mental illness. I mean, not just an allegation, but that doctors had confirmed that he had a mental illness. The thought of him with his finger poised over the button. And the question for the West, of course, what do we believe about this? Do we think that Russia really poses a nuclear threat, or is that all bluster? Because the reality of the Russian army is, as Richard Kemp describes in the headline, Vladimir Putin's military cupboard is bare. But it's an interesting point, and that's what newspapers should be doing, analysing with experienced analysts what's going on.
OK, well, you're analysing, Claire, this Roe versus Wade ruling, this abortion ruling. Well, it's a leaked memo about this, and this is in the Daily Mail. And you've seen, we've discussed it an hour ago on the programme, and you saw Isabel carrying out an interview down the line to the United States on this. What's your take?
My take is, one, why it's up for change. Who's bringing this change and why it's being done. Why it was leaked is another question that should be answered. But, the UK are looking on this to the States and thinking exactly the same thing. What is going on? The two questions, why it was leaked and why is the ruling going to be changed?
So what will change if this ruling comes about? Where are we at and where is the proposal going to?
Right, where we're at the moment, abortion on demand is available in all states apart from Texas, who took the change during the summer of last year. The change will be, if the leaked memo it suggests that the law will change, will be that all the other states will need to sort out their own agenda and their own laws and their own statutes, therefore, on abortion.
David, just from a legal perspective, I'm interested what your thoughts on all of this are, because it sort of baffles us here in the UK to look at the way this right, whether it's sort of reproductive rights of a woman, aren't actually protected in law in America.
Or in the Constitution.
Yeah, this was an amendment that was voted on in the 70s.
Yes, I think that, look, this is a difficult issue, and it's particularly a difficult issue for men who are already regarded as deeply irresponsible on this. But I just don't think it's possible to turn the clock back to the days of illegal abortions, of some old woman somewhere sticking a needle in somewhere sensitive on the basis of inducing an abortion. Everyone has the right to decide whether they will carry a baby to full term. For those who don't, I think it's extremely difficult to demand that they do without all manner of social issues. Now, I'm against late abortions. I'm against a whole host of things where the balance is tilted too far in favour of the woman and against the unborn fetus. But what we cannot do, I think, and I think it will cause a breakdown in civil society in America, and that was what one or two of the political comments in the papers are saying, this is a gift to Biden because Trump has handed over this exploding bomb and women's resentment parading across all of the cities of America. It isn't going to make very good watching. And fundamentally, having given people what they regard, rightly or wrongly, as a right, to try and take it away, very difficult.
Well, you've got the President of the United States, Joe Biden, who came out last summer and said that he didn't believe, and we have to put a caveat in here, he says he's a practicing Catholic, that he doesn't believe that conception is the start of the child, that life does not start at conception. So you've got a Democrat who's leading the country, who is a practicing Catholic, who is now saying, or said last year, that he doesn't believe that life begins at conception, which is the fundamental underpinning of most of the Catholic belief in anti-abortion, pro-life stance. And yet he is in support of Roe v. Wade not being changed.
Yeah, and I suppose there'll be lots of Catholics that do sympathise with him, that see this as, you know, it's regressive to go back in time, and you know, the situation is as it is. And
Roe v. Wade was brought in because, and the woman who brought the Roe v. Wade in didn't actually abort her child in the end, and the child wanted nothing. She's now grown up. She wants nothing. She wanted nothing to do with her mother, and that's again a very twisted, sordid story in parts of that woman who brought this legislation to fruition.
Quick word, David, about your football club, Chelsea.
Yeah.
Well, at the moment, it's Roman Abramovich's club. The government have said you better sell it, and you can't benefit from what? The sale? Well, he has to benefit.
Yes, he can't benefit from any of the proceeds.
All that.
One of the proceeds is a £1.5 billion loan that he gave to the club, which initially he said he would write off. But now he appears to be trying to say that he won't write it off, I guess because his wealth has been cut back so much, he can't really afford to give away, poor fellow, £1.5 billion. Now, what is worrying here are two or three things. First of all, if this isn't sorted out, Chelsea will, if not go under, will be stricken and will not be an effective football club. Now, you, as a supporter of Manchester United, Eamonn, you may think, so what? But you see, you probably don't, because you know if Manchester United are going to play a match, they need to play a match against a team like Chelsea. In other words, we all need each other. Mm-hmm. And the other problem, of course, is that as a consequence of Abramovich going, I mean, Abramovich, I always felt right from the time I first got to know him, or of him, is that he was obviously a Putin man, and heaven knows what services he offered to Putin, but they were very close. But the problem, as a proprietor of a football club, he was actually at his best. I don't want to sound like the guy who said to me, why were you so against Hitler? He liked Wagner, as if because I like Wagner, you know. Yeah. But the reality is we now have a situation where the club is likely to be bought, if it can be bought in time, by American private equity. I'm sorry, but, you know, I don't believe in American private equity owning British football clubs.
Or British anything.
Yeah.
Because it basically is all sold off for profit as quick as they can. Yeah, and I was reading about, today, it was about Morrison's supermarkets, who have been bought over by the same sort of setup, right? And what are they doing? They're flogging off all the Morrison petrol stations.
Yeah.
So they are. So they get these firms or club Chelsea, and then they flog off the bits that make money, will make them
Strip
extra
them bare.
dosh.
Yeah, exactly.
Strip them bare. None of us benefit from that. They all benefit. But
just a quick one. Could Chelsea supporters not buy the club?
But we're talking a couple of billion, babe.
Yes, but
where are we going to get that from?
Is that something that can be done though? Like a club be bought out by the
Well, I mean, look, anybody
happened,
can bid.
One of the low-ranking clubs, I can't think.
But interestingly, Jim Ratcliffe, who admittedly very late in the day made a bid, has been told what to do with his bid, and it's not accept it, you know.
Yeah.
And that's sad, because I simply think it is not sustainable that the English Premier League is simply not English. They may play their games in England, but they're not English.
Well, we're all doomed anyway when it comes to wealth and influence. I'm just seeing here that a study has shown that people with square faces, I'm not exactly sure what a square face is, will do very well in life because they're deemed to be successful and aggressive and dominant. And I'm looking around the table, oval?
Heart-shaped.
Round?
Oval? Yeah.
Round. So we...
Thanks a lot. It's great to come in here, all flogging over, Liz, only to be insulted. Yeah. I'm outraged. I should storm off the...
I interviewed William Shatner recently, Captain Kirk from Star Trek, right?
Don't forget, I remember that. I'm not Boris. I do remember him.
And when he finished the interview and he said, it was lovely talking to you, you and your big, round Irish face. He said.
So his eyesight was all right.
His eyesight was fine. I thought it was very good. Guys, thanks very much indeed. The guys will be back in 40 minutes' time.
Now, as you heard during the pay-per-view there, we've been talking about obesity throughout the programme, but a new study has claimed that vegetarian children are nearly twice as likely to be underweight as their meat-eating friends.
Well, join us now. This is Rhiannon Lambert. Rhiannon is a nutritionist. Rhiannon, I don't know, first of all, are you a vegetarian or what do you make of this study?
Oh, goodness. I mean, I think this study, the headline's a little bit misleading. So actually, it was looking at nutrient levels, especially in children, of iron and calcium. And they actually found that children can achieve all the nutrients they need on a vegetarian diet. It's just that they're more likely to be underweight. But then you can flip that to the same argument that meat eaters are more likely to be overweight looking at this data. So there's a lot of nuance here, and ultimately I think you can be a very healthy vegetarian. It just needs planning, and people need to understand what goes into their food.
Children to be vegetarian, because you have to be of a certain age, I'd imagine, to be even conscious of what it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think it's completely important that parents that raise their children with any dietary choice that they have, you know, it could be vegetarian, pescatarian, it could be for religious reasons. There's a lot of reasons why parents raise their children in a certain way. It's their choice, but it has to be nutritionally planned. And ultimately, for some people, especially if it's vegan, not vegetarian, then supplementation will need to be involved as well. So it's so important that we raise the future generations to get all the nutrients that they require.
Any vegetarians that I know, I think they've got all the nutrients they require because, Rhiannon, if I went vegetarian, I mean, I think health benefits, that's got to be the thing. I would also like to think that I would be less in stature. There would be less off me.
If I went vegetarian, I'd just eat pasta and cheese and pizza all day long.
So you would get bigger and bigger, you think?
I think having...
And that seems to be the case. A lot of people see if you're a vegetarian, you're only going to eat really good stuff, but not necessarily so. It's funny that this talks about children being underweight. Certainly in my experience of vegetarians, I know and have known for a number of years, they might know who they are now when I say this, well, they're hardly fading away.
Oh, right.
No, you're not. They're hardly fading away. That's my point, Rhiannon.
Well, I think really the data we've got here, let's just address this particular study as well, because it can include different ethnicities, cultural backgrounds, and it was using a measure called BMI, which changes from country to country. And we included different data here where some children, like Asian children, are more likely to be vegetarian and more likely to be classified as underweight. So look, you can be a healthy vegetarian and an unhealthy vegetarian, just as you can be an unhealthy meat eater or a healthy meat eater. Nutrition is all about getting the right balance that works for you, for your family, and not everybody's the same. I think we tarnish everybody with this one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to nutrition, and we really need to try and remember the fact that ultimately, you know, you are a unique individual, and perhaps a vegetarian diet doesn't work for you, or perhaps it does. Like Isabel just said, just like I would just eat pasta and cheese. Perhaps we can work on that, get some more fibre in there, some more vegetables, but ultimately you can do it healthily.
What about this news that Europe, we could become the fatties of Europe if we carry on the way we are with these Deliveroo type takeaways? It's a bit of a worry, isn't it?
I mean, the health of Europe and the nation is a huge worry. And there's so many factors involved in that. There's the government and the rules and the advertising, the factories, the manufacturers. We've got poverty. We've got people now living with higher financial demands. There's education. This is a huge, huge problem, and people's health should come first. And I feel there's a huge gap for nutritional education that's lacking. I mean, I would say that as a nutritionist. I know that might sound very preachy, and I appreciate not everybody has the resources to implement behaviour change, but something has to be done, and it has to be done on a multitude of levels here, stemming right from the top all the way down to us as the consumer.
Well, I think parents have a big responsibility in the example that they set, and a lot of us are not very good at setting that example. My own parents, thankfully, when I look back at my old childhood, for instance, there was always a fruit bowl on our table, and I have continued that. I always have a fruit bowl, and I make an effort to eat an apple.
Do you have an apple a day?
No.
No, I
but
don't. You get your 5 a day of fruit and veg.
I do.
I don't know if I always do.
I try to do that.
I definitely make sure my kids do, but I don't always.
I think it's quite scary that young people, by that I mean people under 40, a lot of them would actually be physically sick biting into an apple. Do you think these trends disappear? That it isn't sexy, it isn't cool to eat it. Do you eat? You don't eat apples?
I love apples. Yeah.
You don't overindulge in them.
I just often haven't thought about it consciously what I've eaten in a day, but whenever I think about it, I'll happily reach for an apple.
You have good teeth for an apple. Do you know why a horse can eat an apple? Do you know what I mean? I'm just saying it's easier for you to sink teeth into an apple. So you should make use of that, or a carrot, or a pear or something.
Rhiannon, what about your gnashes?
I'm highly amused by this discussion. No, I would agree with you, Eamonn, that I don't think people have a fruit bowl anymore in the house in the way they used to. I think times have changed. There's less cooking from scratch, which is a crucial element, of raising children to even know where their fruit and veg comes from, and adults of a certain age. There was one particular bit of data that showed that adults, most of them thought tomatoes, really the main source was items like tomato ketchup that they had in their diet every day, rather than eating a tomato. And like you've just said, having a piece of fruit, 5 a day, only like 27% of the population are getting 5 a day. Not enough.
Lovely talking to you. Hope people make a healthy choice for their breakfast today and throughout the day. Rhiannon Lambert is a nutritionist. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate that.
Take a quick break now. And
My wife, really, she's equine looking. We were talking about faces and things. But I mean, some people are bovine. I might be a bit bovine, round and big eyes and things.
I don't know what you are.
But she's equine.
She's equine.
So she's
refined
she's got
and she's
teeth
leggy.
that go back. No, her teeth must be like that length.
She's got the most beautiful smile, and I've often thought that, and I'll not have you say anything else.
I'm just telling you fact. She could demolish an apple. She could take an apple in one go. She could. She's got such a big mouth.
She just messaged me.
Is she?
Yeah, she just said to David Mellor not get the...
Let's go to the break. We'll be back after this.
Tonight on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Party leaders making their pitch to the public on this, the last day of campaigning before polls open in the local elections.
Good morning. It is 8 o'clock on Wednesday, the 4th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Leading the news this morning, it's politics, and party leaders are due to visit key electoral battlegrounds 24 hours ahead of polls opening in the local elections.
The Prime Minister is expected to visit Hampshire today, and the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer will be campaigning in Wakefield, with the cost of living likely to be the biggest issue on the agenda.
We're going to be speaking to a pollster very shortly about what to expect, and we'll catch up with our political editor Darren McCaffrey, who is in Sunderland, finding out what matters to you, the voters there.
In Ukraine, President Zelensky used his latest national address to thank Prime Minister Boris Johnson for his important words after he addressed the Ukrainian parliament yesterday. He also appealed for a ceasefire to allow for more evacuations from the Mariupol steel plant.
GP and friend off the show, Dr. Sarah Kayat, will be here talking through all things health this morning. So if you have any questions or concerns, please do get in touch. And how do you do that, Isabel?
Well, because we are the People's Channel, we love to hear from you. The email is gbnews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Well, so to our top story, and it's the last day of campaigning before polls open in the local elections tomorrow. The party leaders, they're out and about visiting key electoral battlegrounds.
Yeah, and GB News political editor Darren McCaffrey joins us this morning from Sunderland. Good to see you, Darren. Look, this is going to be a big moment for both leaders of the main parties, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, in a sense, that Keir Starmer needs to do well in these elections. He needs to win back, actually, some of the voters who switched from Labour to the Conservative Party a couple of years ago in places like here in Sunderland. And there is a bit of a battle here in Sunderland. Labour potentially could lose control of the council. And that would be not great news for the Labour leader. So Labour overall are expected to do quite well, win back hundreds of council seats, but it's how big that win that matters to Keir Starmer. He needs to prove he can potentially win the next election. As for the Prime Minister, again, this is a real test of his premiership. Many people are suggesting he's not as popular as he was, that Partygate has an impact, that the cost of living crisis, Isabel, is having a big impact on people's willingness to support the Conservatives mid-term. But also concern, and we talk about the red wall a lot, don't we? We're not going to use the blue wall, that is, i.e. people in the south of England who traditionally have voted Conservatives. If you talk to Conservative analysts, they're concerned that some of them may well switch, not necessarily to Labour, but to the Liberal Democrats, and that could cost them dozens, if not hundreds of council seats across southern England. So elections are always a test for political leaders. It is mid-term. The government rarely do very well mid-term in between elections. But in saying that, this could set the future direction, at least for the coming months, of how the political parties view the leaders and their ability to win over voters.
Thank you very much indeed, and we'll see you a little bit later on in the programme. Well, for more on the issues and what exactly matters to people on the doorstep, we're joined now by the pollster and research director at Ipsos, Kieran Pedley. And Kieran, I'm just looking at a tweet that you put out talking about the things that matter most to the people that you've been polling, and cost of living right up there with 67%.
Yes, I mean, it's no surprise to us, having followed these numbers over a period of time, that cost of living is top of voters' minds as they head to the polls. We find that 7 in 10 Britons think the economy is going to get worse in the next year. We know that people expect prices to rise. They're concerned about that. And 59% of Britons think they're worse off than they were before the last general election.
Well, especially if their council tax rises, Kieran, in this situation, and they don't perceive they're getting value for money or that things are changing in any way.
Well, the interesting thing when we look at local elections is we all know that these are different animals to general elections. Turnout's much lower. And when we ask people about what affects your quality of life in your local area, people do recognise that local councils are important. But at the same time, a majority tell us that they don't necessarily know what local councillors do or how decisions are made at a local level. So when you add all of that together, what you've got is this complex picture of both local issues mattering, but also national issues too. So it's a mix.
Right at the bottom of the list of issues that matter to people is Downing Street parties and, what regulations were broken. So we know then that could possibly be a good thing for the Conservatives, although they're expecting quite a bad day tomorrow. UK government policies for dealing with asylum seekers getting 47%, right up there as the second most important issue.
So I think the way to think about this is almost in three tranches. So cost of living is way out in front in terms of the number one issue on voters' minds. And then there's a battery of issues in the mix. You've mentioned asylum seekers, but also climate change, things to do with levelling up as well. And you're right that, relatively speaking, Partygate is lower down the list. But just because something is less important comparatively doesn't make it unimportant. One of the things that we notice is that people that don't like Boris Johnson place a greater importance on that issue. So what you might find, either in this election or in future elections, is that people that are critics of Johnson might be more inclined to turn up to vote against him because of some of those issues. At the same time, we have to stress that cost of living is front and centre of people's minds, and in the medium to longer term, people are going to be looking for answers. And I suppose that where those answers come from is going to impact the major parties.
Are they asking their local council to act on the cost of living, or is it a reflection on the national party that either support for it on a national scale, even though it's not, it's on a local scale, sending a message out?
In the longer term, it's going to be Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, whoever's in charge, that people are going to be nationally, that people are going to be looking to for answers. When we ask about local issues, it's often potholes and the quality of pavements and the roads that people are most interested in, what local councils are doing.
Definitely.
Again, it's probably no surprise to people that are out and about campaigning and on the doorstep and things of that nature. So, as I say, it's a complex picture of local and national issues. Cost of living is dominating how people feel. And I suppose that in the medium to longer term, that sense of, if you like, pessimism about the future of the country is going to be what dominates where we are in the next year or so.
So those are the issues. Has your polling got any indicator on how you think it's all going to play out? What sort of day Friday will be in terms of the results?
Well, of course, the big challenge here is there's so much expectation management going on from all of the major parties. I think what we're going to see, I'm quite confident what we're going to see is that gains will be exaggerated, losses will be explained away. I'm not going to put figures to what the scale of results might be, but I think when we wake up on Friday, we're going to be looking for two things. One is a scale of change, to see what pressure that does or does not put on Boris Johnson and his future amongst Conservative MPs. But the other thing is where the change is happening. So one of the details I'll be looking for particularly closely is what the Liberal Democrats do in relation to the Conservatives and things of that nature in the so-called blue wall, because that might give us a bit of an indication as to what could happen at a future general election. But again, we must stress that turnout is much lower at locals than at a general election. So our ability to read across is limited.
Yeah, and not just because they're local elections. Do you think turnout might be low also because they're a bit sort of disenchanted with everything that's been happening in Westminster, whether it's claims of misogyny, whether it's watching porn in Parliament or whatever it might be? Turnout already low, but do you think it could be even lower?
I guess we'll have to wait and see. I still think that we'd be looking at, I'm not going to predict turnout, but I don't think it's going to be disproportionately lower than what we've seen. People do recognise the importance of local councils and what goes on locally, and they recognise the importance of these elections. So I still think whilst turnout is considerably lower than general elections, people will still show up to make their voice heard.
Just seeing what you're saying about all of this, Gerald, why the concentration of macro problems when local elections are about local services and which individual can do a good job. Which party they belong to is irrelevant. Do you think that comes through in terms of things, Kieran, that people are going to look and say, look, what is best? I may vote this way in a general election, but in a local election, I'll vote a different way because I believe in that person or what that party has done for my neighbourhood.
I think to an extent that's true. Also, there is tactical voting. I mean, there are people that will vote one way in a general election because they know it's a two-horse race between two particular parties, but they'll know that in the local ward that they're voting in in their local elections, it's two different parties, let's say. So we do see sort of tactical voting where people split their vote at a local and general election. I mean, one of the things our polling does make clear is that people recognise that this is a different beast to a general election. They recognise that what local councillors are promising, local candidates are promising is important. The record of a local councillor is important in their vote too. But I think you can't get away from the central fact that there is a mix of local and national issues at play when people go to the polls tomorrow.
OK, Kieran Pedley from Ipsos Mori, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Should we read out a few more views? Jane says, did you know Edinburgh, the capital city, is the pothole capital of Europe? She says it's a national disgrace. I think the SNP Labour Council employ blind men to check the streets and pavements.
Yeah, there's some of these things we can't read out because they can't affect what way people may vote. Rowe and Powis says, to me, local elections should be on local issues and how your council has performed in the past.
And Paul's got just a quick anecdote about what life was like as a councillor. We were talking about it earlier. Yeah. He says, I got home at 6 a.m. after an overnight count as a borough councillor. A few hours later, there was banging on the front door and an agitated resident asked my wife to see me. He said whilst he had voted for the incumbent rather than me, since I won, he wanted me to stop an ongoing planning application by his neighbour. A very lively start to being a councillor.
And at the deep end, and the reason we're talking about that is Isabel's daddy was for many years a local councillor, so that sort of sense of public service and public duty. 12 minutes past the hour. Let's bring you up to date with the news.
The Pope has asked for a meeting with President Putin in Moscow. He wants to try and stop the war in Ukraine, but has not yet received a response from the Kremlin.
Wayne Couzens and the killer of author Labinjo Hughes will have their prison sentences reviewed at the Court of Appeal later today. The ex-police constable Couzens was handed a whole life term for killing Sarah Everard.
Protesters rallied in cities across the United States demanding abortion rights be protected. This comes after a Supreme Court document was leaked suggesting that judges may vote to overturn Roe v. Wade, the 1973 decision which legalised abortion nationwide. Well, Sarah Everard's murderer, Wayne Couzens, and the killers of Arthur Labinjo Hughes are to have their prison sentences reviewed together at the Court of Appeal today.
Senior judges are going to hear challenges or appeals to the prison sentences of 5 killers and consider how whole life orders are imposed. Well, our London reporter Alice Porter is outside the court now. And Alice, tell us what will be happening today.
Well, senior judges are reviewing the sentences of some of the most high-profile killers over the last few years. Now, 2 are appealing because they believe their sentences were too severe, and 3 are having their sentences looked at to see if they were too lenient. And those 3 are Emma Tustin, Thomas Hughes and Jordan Monaghan. Now, Emma Tustin was convicted last year over the death of Arthur Labinjo Hughes, the 6-year-old in Solihull who was killed with a fatal blow to her head, but had received a huge amount of torture at the hands of his stepmother and his father. Now, she was given life imprisonment with a minimum term of 29 years, but because of her age, she could be around 60 years old when she is released. Now, the Attorney General has appealed their sentences and Jordan Monaghan's sentence. Now, he murdered 2 children and his partner and was handed 3 mandatory life sentences with a minimum of 40 years. But the Attorney General wants Hughes' sentence to be increased and for Tustin and Monaghan's sentences to be upgraded to be whole life orders. Now, that means they would never be released from prison. It's the most severe punishment that you can receive, and that's what the judges will be looking at today.
OK, Alice. And for those sentences, then, which are the ones that are being looked at to see whether they were actually too low?
Well, Ian Stewart received a whole life order in February for the murder of the children's author Helen Bailey and also killing his wife. So that's one. And the second one is Wayne Couzens will also be appealing his sentence. Now, he was given a whole life order for the murder of Sarah Everard, her kidnap and her rape as well. Now, it's quite unusual for somebody who has killed just one person to receive a whole life order, but because of the manner in which she was kidnapped as he was a serving police officer, the judge was able to use their discretion and to increase that to a whole life order. But both those two men will be appealing their sentences today.
And how often does this type of review happen then, Alice?
This is highly unusual to have 5 cases in this way reviewed by multiple judges. So today is very much about when judges hand out whole life orders and how they interpret sentencing guidelines. Of course, this is very political. The government wants people like Emma Tustin to receive longer sentences. And of course, this is something that's very popular with the public. Life doesn't mean life. I mean, that is something that people complain about quite frequently. So today is an opportunity to re-examine what exactly a life sentence means.
OK, Alice, thank you. I know you'll keep us posted on all developments there throughout the day. For now, we say goodbye to you. Thank you.
Look, what we're going to do is there's been a lot of talk last week about HRT and the availability of it. Dr. Sarah will be here after the break talking about that.
Yep, first of all, we're going to take a quick break and you're going to get a little bit of a forecast.
Good morning, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's a bit dull and damp out there first thing, but it will very gradually brighten up, albeit with some heavy showers later, and it's a warmer day compared to the last few days, particularly towards the east. High pressure is towards the southwest of the UK. Around the top of that high, weather fronts are toppling in, and these are generally weak affairs, but, well, they're bringing an awful lot of cloud and some outbreaks of rain. The rain tending to be on and off, mostly it's light, but a few moderate bursts in there. And they are spreading northwest to southeast across the country during the morning. By the afternoon, the cloud lifts a little, some breaks developing, but actually I think a lot of places will keep the cloud cover and heavy showers will form. Hail and thunder possible in some of the livelier downpours, but away from the showers, actually 17, 18 Celsius possible in, well, eastern Scotland, central and eastern England. So it's going to be feeling a bit warmer. But those heavy showers, of course, will be pretty lively in places, especially towards central and eastern parts of the UK. They ease away overnight, clear spells for many, but cloudier for Scotland, for Northern Ireland as well, with some outbreaks of rain in the far northwest. 8 to 10 Celsius typically as we wake up on Thursday. And plenty of sunshine to greet us across much of England and Wales. Eastern Scotland generally bright as well. Western Scotland, Northern Ireland seeing cloud and some outbreaks of mostly light rain. That turns more showery into the afternoon. 1 or 2 showers possible for Western England and Wales as well. But actually a good deal of dry and bright weather, especially towards the southeast, where somewhere like London could get 20 or 21 Celsius, mid to high teens generally elsewhere. The warmth stays with us on Friday and into the weekend. Some outbreaks of rain or showers on Friday, but drier and brighter for the vast majority on Saturday and Sunday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, here on Breakfast, we've been talking about the shortage of hormone replacement therapy drugs, but companies are now being accused of profiteering from those shortages. Caroline Harris, Labour MP for Swansea East, who's also the co-chair of the Menopause Task Force, claimed that some HRT products are being sold online for 3 times as much as they're worth. Campaigners are also raising concerns that some women are turning to the black market to access the drug. Well, Dr. Sarah joins us now. I have to tell you, I was chatting to a friend of mine about all of this, and she was telling me a really extraordinary story yesterday. She'd gone to go and collect her prescription. One of the 3 items for her hormone replacement prescription was not available because of this shortage, and they weren't able to split the prescription. So she was told, can you just go and try at all the different pharmacies in the area, and warned that she'd probably find the same situation in all of the pharmacies, in which case she'd need to go back to her GP to see if the GP could split it, to give her 3 separate prescriptions. And she just said, I haven't got the time for this nonsense. No. Not only is she short on the drug that she needs for HRT, but it's just a complete nightmare.
Oh, yeah, neither the patient has time nor the GP has time to do all of those things together. It's definitely becoming very difficult, and so you can somewhat understand why women are going to the black market and going abroad and rationing their medications in order to try and access these things.
Apparently, some people are saying that you can find it through private doctors and through private pharmacies. Now, how can that be the case if there's a shortage? Why is that not across the board?
So it should be across the board, but unfortunately, people do stockpile. Right. And they have been, these private companies have been hiking up their prices so much that they don't, fly off the shelves as quickly. But unfortunately, people are paying, 3 times as much as they need to for it. And I think that's just so sad. There are other things that you can be doing to try and manage the shortage. So, for example, the British Menopause Society have released a whole document about alternatives for your current regimen. Your GP has been informed about the different alternatives for hormonal replacement, but also there are alternatives that don't contain hormones to try and manage your symptoms.
But I mean, it's a serious situation for a lot of women, and we're hearing reports of women feeling suicidal, other women just completely overwhelmed by this. What are medical professionals been hearing from patients on it?
I think the problem is that people don't necessarily take the menopause or HRT seriously. They think it's a lifestyle choice, or that it's a luxury. But it's, as you say, patients can really be struggling. It affects quality of life, work, social situations. So I think what needs to happen is we need to actually take it a lot more seriously. And you do get a lot of patients coming in feeling as though they're being dismissed.
And how long is this likely to last? And how did we even get to this situation? Because I understand the basic theory that, the risks of breast cancer have been, debunked now, and women in their droves are saying, I'm going to take this treatment. Yeah. But that doesn't happen overnight. That happens gradually. And surely these pharmaceutical companies are monitoring, an increase in demand.
Yeah, I mean, the number of prescriptions for HRT has doubled, but over the last 5 years. So as you say, it's been a fairly slow increase. And I don't feel that the manufacturing companies and suppliers have responded as efficiently as they should have to the increase in demand.
And is there any way that it can be quickly remedied? I mean, are they going to be able to up production, or do women just need to get used to having to use alternatives in the short term?
Well, the difficulty is that we've actually been struggling with HRT shortages for a long time. We had, shortage in 2019, 2020, again now. So this is something that's been going on for some time, and that it's not been rectified thus far is a worry to me. I think, we know that the government is starting to take it more seriously, electing this HRT czar, creating a rationing of only 3 months allowed to be prescribed. So I feel like, action is happening. So hopefully that means this time round we are going to be able to do something about it and do it more quickly. But we don't have dates yet.
Right, OK. And your number one tip then to anyone who's at home watching this and really worried about it would be to look at alternatives rather than to try and go and see their GP again?
Well, you can look at alternatives, or your GP can supply you with those alternatives. I think going from pharmacy to pharmacy to pharmacy is exhausting and not appropriate for a patient to have to do. So please speak to your doctor about alternatives.
OK, just one final thought. We've been talking this morning about the increase in the use of things and apps like Deliveroo, Uber Eats, and the impact it's having on our weight as a nation. The theory is that in 10 years we could be the fattest nation in Europe. As a doctor, is that something that worries you?
Of course, alarm bells, massively. Unfortunately, obesity is one of the largest causes of mortality and lots of different morbidities. So absolutely, but I don't think we should necessarily mean we can't order out and enjoy ourselves. We just need to find ways to balance that.
OK, good advice. Dr Sarah Kyatt, always lovely to have you on the show. Thank you.
Mark in Norfolk, good morning to you, Mark. I do some Deliveroo.
In Norwich, it's a great way to top up my income. Over 2 nights this week, I made nearly £150 using my small car. But the point is, you see the same people all the time having takeaways. Yeah, but as the doctor was saying, that's not good. You've got to use it sensibly, and some home-cooked food in with that as well. Joe and Maggie, good morning to you. On a side note, we live in Bolton. On the Bolton-Blackburn border. We have a farm close by which delivers milk, cheese and dairy products. And we call our service Delivermoo. Very good.
That is
Very
brilliant.
Good.
That
Very
is
good.
brilliant. Keep those thoughts coming in. We love them all through the programme. We're going to take a quick break. After that, we'll be talking to the broadcaster, Clem Muldoon, and the former Conservative Minister, David Mellor. See you in a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
OK, it's fast approaching 8:30. Let's bring you up to date with the latest headlines.
Party leaders are out visiting key electoral battlegrounds today, last day of campaigning, ahead of voters going to the polls for tomorrow's local elections.
The Pope has asked for a meeting with President Putin in Moscow. He wants to try to stop the war in Ukraine, but has not yet received a response from the Kremlin.
It's understood that the suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann has had a parole application rejected in Germany. We're going to be talking about this next, but it comes as German investigators discovered fibres believed to be from Madeleine's pyjamas in a van belonging to the suspect.
Pro-choice demonstrations in cities across the United States took place, demanding abortion rights be protected. It's after a Supreme Court document was leaked, suggesting judges may vote to overturn Roe versus Wade. That's a 1973 decision which legalised abortion nationwide.
David Mellor and Claire Muldoon on the papers today. David, we're going to start with you and the front page of The Sun, and it's inside the Mirror as well. But basically, as I mentioned there, Maddie pyjama fibres in suspect's van.
Well, first thing to say is that Maddie McCann story always brings tears to my eyes. You know, I can't. I mean, most 3-year-olds are pretty little things, but she was a spectacularly good-looking little girl, and to have her life snuffed out in the way that she did was appalling, and all because, you know, understandably enough, parents went out for supper thinking she was safe, and of course no one is ever safe from the kind of predator that, well, one suspects Mr. Boomer turns out to be. But there is something else that, you know, we are here because we support newspapers, okay, we support television, and I made the point earlier on that newspapers are very good for comment and analysis. But am I wrong in detecting a bit of cynicism about all of this? I mean, she was killed 15 years ago, bless her. Maddie pyjama fibres found in suspect's van, front page of The Sun, 2 pages inside. I mean, you don't have to be much of a lawyer, so I can comment perfectly well on this. You don't have to be much of a lawyer to say, no way could that ever be introduced into evidence after 15 years. And you just wonder whether the papers, and it's true of the Mirror as well, links to Maddie found in suspect's camper, they're slightly leading on their readers and titivating their readers with information that almost certainly has no evidential worth whatsoever.
The danger is that there's nothing that has any evidential worth, and that, well, that no one will ever be prosecuted for it, which is just adds to the horror of it all, really.
But this happened 15 years ago. There are other children who have disappeared without the national spotlight on them, even 15 years after the event. Now, the papers are full of Madeleine McCann from the past month, 6 weeks, I would say. Yeah. It started to rear its ugly head only because it's the anniversary of her disappearance. So whatever's happened. We've got the Portuguese on the case. We've got Bruckner in a German jail, convicted of rape. The US have done a documentary on him. But my heart goes out to people whose children have been lost in other parts of the world who don't have this national spotlight on them. It's grave for any parent to have gone through this. And yet the papers themselves in this country, some of them are still holding Jerry and Kate McCann culpable for their daughter going missing. It's atrocious. Everybody has a view, don't they? And yet, these are the parents who have lost their child. And it keeps coming back. And don't forget, she had siblings, and it must be incredibly difficult for them to try and relive and carry on going forward their own lives.
Yeah, they're in their late teens now, the twins, and you know, they must be fully aware of what
Absolutely.
And the fact that they were there as well.
Exactly, in the room.
Yeah.
David, will the Pope get an audience with Vladimir Putin?
Well, it's interesting. I refer to this, only fair to the Daily Star, which I don't open all that often, but they have got this story, you know, a Vlad dodging Pope summit, and I'm sure he is dodging a Pope summit. But you see, one of the sad things about this whole Ukrainian business is the UN is hopeless. I mean, immeasurably hopeless. Organisations like the Red Cross, who used to be so good in wars, setting out the rules for treating prisoners and particularly treating civilians. For the Pope to get involved in this, therefore, one doesn't have to have the highest opinion of the Pope not to feel that this is a good thing. Because what astonishes me is that 3 months into this thing, Putin can get away with cruelty on a mega scale, cruelty to innocent people. And how does he avoid every day having to see headlines. Everyone will expect the Ukrainians, so they're quite right to have a go at him. Everyone will expect Western leaders to have a go at him. What is needed is people of moral authority from the religious or other communities actually saying this is intolerable.
Well, does Vladimir Putin acknowledge Pope Francis's moral authority? Because he has his own patriarch in his own church who he sort of defers to on religious matters there. And the other point I wanted to make about Pope Francis is that he also sort of moved away from the territory of just trying to broker peace, but he also talked about blame. And he was yesterday making some controversial comments about the role of NATO in as a provocateur.
He didn't blame NATO for the ire of Putin. He said NATO has enabled in some way Putin to get away with what he's done.
Do you think that's a fair comment?
No, because I think NATO has to be strong in this, and it's Putin can blame who he wants for the invasion of the Ukraine, but ultimately the responsibility lies with Putin. He can blame whoever he wants, but I will say Putin has done a lot for against coming out of the Cold War, for people to go back to their faith in Russia. I was in Russia about 4 or 5 years ago, and the adoration to the Madonna in all of the museums, both in St. Petersburg and in Moscow, is huge. So he has got people back worshipping, which of course in communist times they couldn't. So I think he's taken the Pope's view, as he's taken NATO's view, as he's taken the West's view, to be, how dare you actually tell me what to do?
But he's got the head of the Russian Orthodox Church is really basically saying that Russia should go back and rebuild its old empire. Not a very, I would say, a sound Christian view. But my point is simply this, that I think that the Pope going to Moscow and shaming Putin is just one of the things that has to be tried. Because if you'd asked me at the beginning of this, how long will this go on for? I would say it would be over quite quickly, either because the Ukrainians would collapse, which thankfully they haven't, or because the Russians would be forced to stand back. There'd have to be some kind of deal. Are we going to go on for months and months and months with innocents being murdered on this sort of scale that they are being? And I just think that all the pressure that can be brought to bear on Putin has got to be brought to bear. Because, we often use words like evil or wicked. Wicked is even now my granddaughter's favourite musical. So, wicked has lost its meaning as a word. But it is evil. It is wicked to be a man like Putin doing what he does to innocent people.
And it amazes me that they have now sent out their own sanctions to the rest of the world, countries which are deemed to be unfriendly to us. It's like some kid at school saying, "You've been mean to me." Unfriendly? I mean, you know.
People.
And who do you think, David, then would actually say there was a peace deal brokered? Who would police that deal?
Exactly, and that's the problem. Always the problem. I mean, it disappoints me that the UN has so spectacularly underperformed in this. And for the Secretary-General of the UN not to realise to go to Russia first and then go to Ukraine. I mean, heaven knows what a stupid thing to do. And it's a shame, because there was a time when the UN did have some moral authority, but it hasn't got any in this.
Well, as you were saying about the Red Cross, even in Africa, with all the war-torn atrocities that happened there, if you saw a Red Cross van, you knew to keep away, or Médecins Sans Frontières. They were always there to help and aid the people in the business, but we're not seeing that in the Ukraine. And I have a fear also of the crimes against humanity, the crimes against women, the rapes, the child abuse that must be going on when they're captured or with the Russian infiltration in Ukraine. There's going to be war crimes here. And the UN, you're so right, David, really has to up its game and actually be a beacon of moving forward and of leadership.
Where would you stand? I'm looking at the front page of Financial Times now. BP's bumper earnings. Stoke calls for windfall tax to offset fuel bills. So the accusation being, not only are they earning tons of money, but they're earning it because prices are going up because of the Ukrainian war.
Well, I mean, I know that Boris has said that he is against it, and I understand why a lot of Conservative people would be against it, because they would say one shouldn't interfere with business in that kind of way. And it's good occasionally to hear Boris mouthing Conservative sentiments. But I personally would have a windfall tax, because why are they earning 25 billion in the first quarter? It's not because they've suddenly spectacularly discovered how to run their business. It's double what they got in the first quarter of last year, because they have been the beneficiaries of current international circumstances.
But they will pay tax on the profit. And essentially, they're there for the shareholders, no?
Well, yeah, and BP will point out 15 months ago they posted their biggest loss. And also, that, of course, when you talk about the shareholders, a lot of those are actually pension funds.
Yes.
Yes. There's an argument, obviously, it's a lively argument, but I just don't think, when we look at all the sacrifices that are going to have to be made and the problems that the ordinary taxpayer that doesn't have, you know, BP's resources, I think that we are in such a state and the public finances are in such a mess that wherever he can get money from, he needs to, well, he and Sunak need to consider that.
Well, they could start with Amazon and Starbucks and start taxing global companies in the area that
I couldn't agree more.
That they're charging.
Claire, what would you do in the situation where you've got the Police Complaints Commissioner? This is a story in the Telegraph, page 5. So you can tell us the detail, who she is and where she commissions from. But she I don't know if I'm smiling about this, but she's not pretty good at observing speed limits.
No, she's not at all. We're talking about Caroline Henry, the Conservative Police Complaints Commissioner from Nottingham. She's not just been charged with speeding once, twice, 3 times, 5 times over the course of, say, 2 months or something like that, in different stretches. So she's speeding in various vehicles. It's gone to court. She could lose her licence, because the licence is 12 points and then you've lost it. She could be carrying 15 extra points on her licence, which will then give her a speeding ban.
But one of her
6 months.
election claims at the time was to say she was going to be tough on speeders.
She was. Make knots safe, she promised, to reduce crime with action, not words. Well, if action is putting your foot down in the accelerator 5 times over or not 5 times over the speeding limit, but doing it 5 times, gosh, I think she really has to readdress her manifesto and business model.
The people who should be condemned for this are the people who think, what a clever idea to have some ordinary member of the public dragged forward and made a police commissioner. Why is it a good idea? You know, they create these jobs, including, you know, get controversial things like the mayor of London. But it would be, you know, the danger of creating big jobs is it would help if you had big people to fill those jobs. And certainly with police commissioners, they are not big people. And so it's quite easy, you know, it's like taking candy from a kid to find something embarrassing about what they do.
Yes, but does that not mean, is that not an obvious resigning matter?
Of course. I mean, it should be an obvious booting out matter.
Right.
So should low-traffic neighbourhoods and LTNs and everything else. They should cease to exist as well. You cannot be... I'm sorry, but the only ounce of I have with her is the fact that it's so difficult to drive anywhere in this country these days. If you make a wrong turn, there's a picture done. Yeah. You know, you're caught red-handed at all costs. It costs so much to drive your car. It costs so much to, you know, function with it, the MOTs, insurances, etc., etc. So why, you know, in the low-traffic neighbourhoods and cycle lanes, especially in London...
Could you explain to people what a low-traffic neighbourhood is?
Well, it's cutting down on the usual term is rat runs. And so you're trying to make the neighbourhood safer. Still no child is out playing with a football.
And the objection is what?
The objection is to make it safer for children.
No.
And the
what I'm saying is,
environment.
what is the objection to that? How does that impair on people's lives?
Well, it takes them 20 minutes to get to a journey that could take them 5 in a car.
Because the road is closed off and they've got to...
they have to make detours. And then what you've got is stationary traffic where you can't move and you can't do anything. You've got stationary traffic where in the past you could overtake or the traffic wasn't as gluttonous as it is. But now you've got the traffic displaced because there's a cycle lane in.
Oh, well, that's an idea. Maybe get on your bike.
Isabel, have you just said that?
Well, why not?
Controversial in the pink.
I'm just saying, if there's a lovely cycle lane next to you which is available and you're stuck, you know, bumper to bumper...
No, I was coming home
traffic, why not?
I was coming home from Hammersmith last night in the bus. And there was the cycle lane past in Hammersmith King Street at the moment, going up to Chiswick, is a nightmare. I looked out of the window and there was actually a cyclist and a person on an electric scooter not even using the lane.
Yeah, that is a problem.
Do you drive, David? Do you have a car?
No, he doesn't.
Yeah. No, we have a car.
Drives
but,
Penny up the wall.
I have road rage. I
Do
have
you really? And you'd admit
no,
to
I
that?
seriously do. I do.
It's a very British problem.
And I dare not drive.
You don't have a licence, do you?
No, I've never taken a test. Doesn't
Really?
prevent me having opinions, though.
No.
Can we talk about higher education, Claire? The Times do loads on this. They've got their education commission, and I want to talk to David in a minute about a story they're running today on Oxbridge, as a Cambridge man himself. But you've chosen this story at page 16, Rise in Complaints about Universities.
Yeah, and this is coming about because students in England and Wales are still paying £9,500 for their tuition fees. In Ireland, for Irish nationals, it's less. Scotland nationals do not pay anything for their tertiary education. However, post-pandemic, lots of universities are still not giving, I can't believe this, face-to-face lectures, tutorials, or whatever. And as you know, at university, getting together with your fellow students is all part of the experience. You live in halls, you live away from home mostly, and then you get together. And you get together in the library, you get together in tutorials and lectures. These kids are not getting that. Thankfully, there is, and I'm not advocating this normally in any shape or form, but you can complain, right? And kids are complaining now, and quite rightly too, I think. They're paying this money, £9,500 plus their grant, now at 5% to pay back to student finance. And for the past 2 years, universities still aren't doing anything. So the university czar has been writing to lots of vice-chancellors to try and change this. And the sooner this happens, I think, the better.
Well, it's essentially saying homeschooling is still going on.
It's still going on.
Numbers of universities, or equivalent to a fee-paying school, which people just wouldn't stand for if it was happening in the under-18s.
Thankfully, though, Uxbridge, well, if you pick this story up with David in a minute, and most of the Russell groups are back to face-to-face. What we're finding is, in this report, is that it's children or kids, young kids, who are not at Russell, who are not at Uxbridge, who are going to the old polytechnics, see, who are university status, but they're the ones that aren't back.
So, David, what's your view then on this story that privately educated teenagers are to lose out on places at Oxbridge in the future, even more than they already are? It's already seen.
Let me make it clear, first of all, I was not privately educated.
Okay.
I know I appear to be rather a sad clone of a public school person, but I am not. I was dragged up down in Dorset.
You're a grammar school boy?
I was a grammar school boy. But it was the proudest moment of my life, it really was, to get to Cambridge. But also I was proud that I was being introduced to a different way of life from what I was used to. I'm not sure how excited I would be about going to Cambridge if it was just like the local poly down the road, I'm sorry to say. Or no, sorry, it's no longer the What's It Polytechnic, it'll be called the University of the Western Hemisphere, you know. But I just think that there's something special about Oxbridge, and the idea that it's clever to sort of dropping people out who are deemed to be on a class base not really worthy of it. Look, there's lots of universities in this country. Everybody who's got, and including quite a lot of people, I suspect, who shouldn't be going anywhere near a university.
Yes.
University. So why can't there be universities like Oxford and Cambridge that are just a little bit different? My sons, for instance, one went to Leeds, had a very good time. One went to Bristol. They didn't get into Oxbridge, but, you know, I still look at them and think, would it have made any difference? The answer is no, it wouldn't. So why are people so spiteful about Oxford and Cambridge and wanting Oxford and Cambridge to be like the rest, when one of the joys of Oxford and Cambridge, as I found, coming from, you know, a very humble background. I mean, I tell you, the first formal dinner I went to there, I had to look at where the knives and which knives and fork they picked up. That was how it was. But it was quite interesting in its way.
Oh, definitely. As you know, my four, I've got two went to Queen's Belfast. Anna's up in Leeds, party city, party girl. You were there when I took her up. And Tom, exactly this, and I can't stand I can't stand Tony Blair anyway, but a lot of things. And he said, you know, everyone should be able to go to university. No, they shouldn't. Only if they want to. Tom wants to go to Newcastle, but if he doesn't get the grades, I'm sorry, he shouldn't be going to university. He could be doing something else.
I just think when it comes to Oxbridge, you know, there seems to be a sort of snobbery about it, an inverse snobbery that people
It's
think...
inverse. It completely is inverse.
Value, you know, the high esteem that it brings and a lot of the research that it does. And if it's not done on a merit basis, but just on a quota basis, then you're going to end up watering down the quality of the institution
of the institution themselves.
I think if there's a problem of not enough people from different social classes getting into the universities, then they need to improve the schools. That seems the obvious solution to me.
It is coming down, the proportion of public school people. And I paid for my kids' education, but I don't carry any large torch for private education. But I think the thing about Oxbridge is it asks a lot to say, well, if some so-and-so had gone to Eton, he'd have got better grades than he did at Slug Street Comprehensive. It's not as though someone at Slug Street Comprehensive, which was like where I was coming from, there wasn't called Slug Street, but, you know, it was broadly...
grammar school.
But it was a sort of grammar school, but it wasn't, you know, they shut it down not long after I left. I understand why they did that. But basically, all I'm saying is that I can't see this class war basis for saying because Oxbridge are judging people on their exam results. And of course, I remember saying to one or two of my friends when I got up to Cambridge that I was in an A-level class for English of 30.
Yeah.
And they couldn't believe it.
Yeah. But
you know, at the end of the day, we got through it.
And the other point worth making is the fees at Oxford and Cambridge are the same as the fees of the University of Northumbria, £9,500. It's not any more expensive to get there, and the weeks are shorter, the terms are shorter. Yeah. It's a win-win.
It is funny you mentioned your class size. Primary school, I had 44 people in my class, 44 people.
Yeah.
But there you go, and I think from that, if I'm right, I think probably 9 or maybe 10 of us passed the 11 plus. But it was the most wonderful experience, actually. Very happy memories of it. And recently, a guy I used to sit beside at primary school got in touch with me. And obviously, we hadn't seen each other in 50 years or so.
And he asked you to go and visit him in prison.
Not at all. Not at all.
But to be serious, and you're right to do that. One of the things I was very glad of was going to, you know, having a pretty mixed education. When I then became a member of Parliament representing a constituency where people could spend a fortune on their homes, but also half my constituents in Putney lived in council tower blocks, it was so much easier because I was not dealing with people who were alien life forms.
Yes,
to me.
yes.
I was dealing with the sort of people I was at school with.
Real people, real life.
And,
yeah.
I mean, and I've always been grateful, therefore, that I was able to grow up in a normal situation where I wasn't given the opportunity to look down my noses at anybody, so I could just get along with them. And it's interesting, you know, I was groping around for all those comments about Boris, and one I was groping around for and failed to find. I think I'm going to have my eyes tested amongst many other costs and have my hair cut. But basically, what they were saying, one backbencher was saying, you know, Boris doesn't really have any sympathy with these people, i.e. people who are struggling, not able to pay the bills. Well, I tell you one thing, I'm certainly not have the talent of Boris, but I did have sympathy for people.
Yeah, empathy.
Because that's where I came from.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a skill.
Look, guys, thank you. Lovely listening to you. Thank you very much indeed. Viewers and listeners, have your say. Tweet us at GB News. David Miller and Claire Muldoon. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Latest news situation is this. 7 in 10 first-time buyers are delaying plans to purchase a home because of the cost of living crisis.
A survey by Nationwide Building Society has found that many of those planning to buy in the next couple of years are now struggling to save for a deposit.
UK intelligence shows that Russia has deployed 22 battalions in eastern Ukraine in an attempt to advance in the Donbass.
Russian attacks in Ukraine's eastern region killed 21 civilians and injured 27 yesterday. Sarah Everard's killer, Wayne Cousin, and the murderers of Arthur Labinjo Hughes will have their prison sentences reviewed at the Court of Appeal later today. The former police constable Cousins was handed a whole life term for killing Sarah Everard.
OK, big political concentration this morning because that's what's affecting you. These local elections are tomorrow. Monmouthshire was the only council that was won outright by the Conservatives in Wales in the last election 5 years ago.
Well, ahead of polling day tomorrow, our national reporter Bradley Harris has been to Monmouth to see if people there still think the same way they did in 2017.
It was 5 years ago when the Conservatives took majority control of Monmouthshire. Now they're promising to tackle bread and butter issues, such as fixing streetlights, pavements and putting potholes right as part of their latest local election campaign. But are these the issues voters here in Monmouthshire want to prioritise?
Plan of infrastructure for parking, so people can park easier, for more tourism for buses to come into town, help support the shops, local businesses, and stop them from closing down, really, because they're not getting the customers into the shops.
I'm thinking more of the economy and the way people are struggling with household bills at the moment, but also the health system. You know, the health system is creaking after COVID particularly, so we need more money pushed into certainly health and the economy generally to help people with things like food banks and so on.
Potholes, the Wye Bridge is atrocious. It's like a third world country road. Parking in the town isn't great anymore because there's no room, and taking your kids to school or school times is just chaos, absolute chaos.
Whatever the issues are, can voters here separate local party promises with the much bigger political stories across the UK? Boris Johnson's handling of the cost of living crisis, the war in Ukraine and the continuing developments over Westminster parties held during COVID restrictions could be crucial as we step closer to May the 5th. Kate Watts runs a cafe in Monmouth. She's noticed her high street change over many years and wants to see consistency from the council.
Thanks, bye. I think there's lots of things that have been happening that, you know, could change your mind, but for me personally, no. I think it's about consistency, making sure we've got the same leader at this time. I don't think we should be changing drastically. Obviously, things like Ukraine, cost of living is really important. It's been really, really difficult over the past 5 years, so any government that was in power really would have had a difficult time. And I think it's been handled as best as it really could. Who knows, you know, if it would have been different with somebody else in power. So for me, yeah, I'm quite happy with how it's been handled.
Across Mono Bridge, others are looking for a change from a Tory majority.
Or if they got back in Monmouth, I think that would be a real retrograde step. It would be just more of the same, of the same, of the same. Not any positive aspects to them, really.
As they look to build on the gains they made 5 years ago, the Welsh Conservatives are well aware that many voters will be basing their decision on wider issues, including lockdown parties in Downing Street and the cost of living crisis. We'll get a better idea of how true that is at the polls tomorrow. Bradley Harris, GB News, Monmouthshire.
Well, with that, we'll take a break after 9 o'clock. Kinsey Schofield live from LA to talk about the controversy surrounding Kim Kardashian, the Met Gala, and Marilyn Monroe. All to come. See you after this.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, but to the point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Party leaders make their pitch to the public on the last day of campaigning before polls open in the local elections.
A very good morning. Good to see you. It's 9 o'clock. It's Wednesday the 4th of May. You're watching and listening to Breakfast here on GB News with me, Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel, Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Party leaders are due to visit key electoral battlegrounds today, 24 hours ahead of polls opening in the local elections.
The Prime Minister is expected to visit Hampshire. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, will be campaigning in Wakefield. Cost of living likely to be the biggest issue on the agenda.
Well, our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, is in Sunderland finding out what matters to voters there.
Yeah, as millions of people go to the polls across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland tomorrow. Isabel, I'm live in Sunderland as Keir Starmer tries to win back former Labour voters in the north of England, while Boris Johnson is concerned about losing some core key Conservative voters in the south. But is it voter apathy tomorrow that could win out?
Sprinkling stardust on our Showbiz News this morning, Kinsey Schofield will join us from Los Angeles a little bit later for the latest headlines from the celebrity world.
And as always, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us @gbnews, and we'll read out as many of those as we can, as we are the People's Channel.
So here we are. This is the last day of campaigning before polls open in the local elections tomorrow. The party leaders are out and about visiting key electoral battlegrounds.
Well, GB News political editor Darren McCaffrey joins us from Sunderland. And I'm interested to know, Darren, whether or not people in Sunderland, perhaps right across the UK, will be focusing in on those issues that are really relevant on a local level, or whether or not the sort of national picture will also be a big influence when they're at the ballot box.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, isn't it, when it comes to local elections, about how and what is at play in all of this, whether it is essentially those local issues, for example, potholes, bin collections, how much council tax you pay, your bus services, for example, or whether in the end, actually, it's those national issues that really come into play for lots of voters. You talked about the cost of living crisis there. That is pretty key in all of this. Many people feeling a substantial rise in the living costs, their heating costs, and indeed in tax increases, or whether things like Partygate may come into play. Fascinating. I'm here in Sunderland, just down the road in Hartlepool, Isabel. The Conservatives have been putting a leaflet through people's doors saying, please do not punish us for events at Westminster. That is not down to us local Conservatives. What we want to do is deliver good local services. So a sign there that even within the Conservative Party, there's a recognition that they do not want people to judge them on those national issues. Nationally, though, this is a really key test for both Keir Starmer, the Labour leader. He needs to effectively win lots of seats tomorrow to demonstrate that Labour is on a path to victory at the next general election, that lead they've had in the polls can translate into actual votes. As for Boris Johnson, he needs to essentially limit his losses. They're talking hundreds of councillors losing their seats tomorrow in these elections. And I think that is the real struggle, isn't it, how Boris Johnson convinces his voters to turn out to back the Conservative Party to a large degree. But in the end, voter apathy may win out. Many of them may well stay at home. And it's how much political damage Boris Johnson suffers tomorrow that could determine what MPs make of him in the days and weeks to come as those further revelations about Partygate come out.
It could do, Darren, although one suspects that, you know, it won't necessarily change anything at all. That is a possibility, isn't it? That we, as the polls are suggesting, the Tories are going to have a bit of a tough day tomorrow, but it'll be business as usual come Monday.
Yeah, in many ways that is possible, of course. You know, this is a local election. Voter turnout will be low. It is mid-term when governments, frankly, normally get a kicking from voters. We've had terrible results in the past in local elections. Pretty much every Prime Minister has had terrible results, even people like Tony Blair and Margaret Thatcher, who went on to win substantial majorities. So in many ways, yes, it is a measurement, a snapshot of public opinion. Not everyone's going to be able to vote tomorrow, by the way. It's not every council seat that's up for election. So it is difficult to judge these things. But there is concern, I think, in the Conservative Party about losing some of the traditional core votes in southern seats that may well switch not necessarily to Labour, but actually to the Liberal Democrats, who can prove a real threat in the southwest of England, parts of the southeast and the West Country, for example. And here in the north of England, Sunderland being a really good example of it, Labour need to demonstrate they can win back seats here, that they can win back red wall voters, because ultimately that's what cost them the last election. And I fear, you know, that actually lots of people may not turn out to vote, but those that do, it's going to be a real judgment call for the Labour Party in Sunderland. Can they win the seats that are up for grabs here? If they cannot, if the Conservatives continue to make inroads, that's of real concern to the Labour leader.
Yeah, OK. Darren, thank you very much indeed. I'm just taking a little look at what the viewers have been telling us this morning. Lawrence says, I've voted since I was 18, served in the British Army, then 30 years in the police. I'm now a plasterer at 63 and I am not voting. Partygate, Beergate, illegal immigration, cost of living crisis and wasting my tax money. Nope, they can all get lost. And I have to say, there's a lot of messages coming in saying that sort of thing this morning.
Well, if it matters to you, it matters to us. We'll read it out. Beside me now, here's a guy who's been just catapulted into the public eye. His name is Ellis Cross. Good to see you, Ellis. And the reason was, Ellis, he was working away on Sunday, and then on Monday he took part in a 10K run.
So you could say, rather than catapulted, he sprinted his way.
He sprinted. He certainly did sprint, because Mo Farah couldn't catch him. So it was a bank holiday 10K run. And were you expecting to take all the headlines?
No, absolutely not. It's come as much of a surprise to myself as it has to everybody else. Obviously, you know, we're talking about a four-time Olympic champion, somebody that is a legend of the sport, such an icon, and has been untouchable for such a long period of his career. But to win it is a surreal feeling, and the experience in the past few days have been crazy, but obviously over the moon and loving every second of it.
What is your distance? What are you good at?
So I'd say the 10K is probably my best.
So he'd wallop you in a marathon, would he?
He would. I thought he would wallop me on Monday, to be honest with you. But yeah, I'd say the 10K is my main distance at the moment as I look to potentially transition onto the roads and in the future half marathons and marathons.
I'm just reading, just to give people an idea of just how unexpected this win was. You had to pay your own entrance fee. You didn't have your name on your bib. You weren't considered part of the elite pack, and you had to take the train to the start line. I mean, you really were the underdog.
Yeah, well, I think that's the beauty of the whole story, to be honest with you, is, you know, it was a great day for sport in general. Not just the fact that, obviously, I beat Sir Mo Farah. That was a crazy kind of achievement for myself. But the fact that, obviously, an underdog managed to beat a favourite is a great story in itself. But, yeah, I had to pay my own entry, the £37 that everybody else had to pay. So didn't have a problem doing that. Obviously, I didn't get the elite hotel either, which was on the course. So meant I missed out on a little bit of a lie-in in the morning. So I was up at 6 a.m. and straight on the train into London for the race.
But Ellis, what I haven't got a hold of is how good are you? Is this a one-off, or are you very, very good in your field?
Look, I think the race hopefully has shown to people the potential that I have when I go onto the roads, especially for the future sort of half marathons and marathons, because I'm 25 now, so I'm thinking positively for the future that I can make major championship teams.
When I was at school, I used to get medals for cross-country running. Really enjoyed it. Your plimsolls, though, were always sodden through.
You're either one type of tissue or the other, aren't you? I was a sprinter. Got the thighs for a sprinter, as they say. But look, just tell us about the race itself, because was it obvious to you quite early on that actually I'm going to beat Mo Farah here? Or at what point did you start to think, hang on a minute, I'm actually going to win this?
Well, he was level with you shoulder to shoulder as you were coming to the line. Now, tell the truth. Were you expecting him then to kick on at that stage?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when you're racing someone, the stature, the calibre of athlete that Mo Farah is, you're almost just waiting. It is a waiting game. You're expecting him to obviously come around.
In your wake.
He's in your eat my dust.
You really are just expecting and like waiting for him to come around, because he's obviously been so renowned over his successful career for having such a fast finish. He's been well known. His sprint finishes have been untouchable. So I was just waiting and waiting, and when I come off the final corner, it didn't truly hit me until I crossed the line, and that feeling was like, it was just...
You couldn't feel his breath behind you? Were you expecting it?
No, I was looking over my shoulder every now and again just to see, like, when is he gonna come now? Because I was just looking, I was happy with, honestly, anyway. If I'd come second, I would have been over the moon. Third, fourth, fifth.
You were both out of breath, right?
For sure.
Did he say anything to you?
He did, no. He congratulated me, and he's as humble as ever. And what makes him such a legend is, you know, he's such a nice guy, and I have so much respect for Mo Farah.
Do you think he might have any tips for you? Or he might tell some scouts to look out for
I
you?
hope so, because you can take quite a lot from somebody of that sort of stature, you know, in terms of the sport, and you can definitely take a leaf out of his book. But
have you been back to work yet?
Last night, yeah. So last night I have a social run group with Up and Running who I work for. So we had a decent turnout last night, to say the least.
Brilliant.
So I took some guys on a social 5-kilometre run, which they really enjoyed.
What's a social 5-kilometre run?
Just for the
Chat
fun.
while you're running?
Just for the fun.
Pretty much. It brings the community together, and everyone can meet up and it's a free, friendly 5 kilometres where we go and just enjoy it. Gets people together and gets people out and active.
How old are you, Ellis?
25.
So a good man. What an amazing thing. Now, it left... I think it's awful that everybody ends up talking about Mo Farah instead of you, but we will. And it raised these questions of retirement with him, and he was very non-committal, but he obviously was quite shaken from the point of view that he did expect to beat you.
Yeah, I mean...
And everyone else.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I say, it's come a shock to a lot of people. But look, he's just come off the back of obviously quite a big training block in Ethiopia of altitude training. I'd also just come off the back of training block altitude in Font-Romeu. But, you know, whenever he decides to hang his spikes up, his shoes up, he's still going to be regarded as the legend that he is. You can't take away what he's done in the sport. It is.
You saved plenty of those pictures and the video and everything off today. So he is Ellis Cross, and he is the Vitality London 10,000 metres winner on Bank Holiday Monday, the 2nd of May. So there you are. Congratulations. Keep that polished. There you go.
Thank you very much.
Good man. Good man. Very nice meeting you. Very well done.
Congratulations,
very well done.
Ellis. What a brilliant
Very well
story.
done.
Like
Very well
an
done.
underdog. Always like an underdog.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right, from Ellis to Kinsey, we're going to be in LA after the break, speaking to Kinsey Schofield about all the showbiz gossip and, of course, a lot more about that dress. Back in a moment.
Good morning, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's a bit dull and damp out there first thing, but it will very gradually brighten up, albeit with some heavy showers later, and it's a warmer day compared to the last few days, particularly towards the east. High pressure is towards the southwest of the UK. Around the top of that high, weather fronts are toppling in, and these are generally weak affairs, but, well, they're bringing an awful lot of cloud and some outbreaks of rain. The rain tending to be on and off. Mostly it's light, but a few moderate bursts in there. And they are spreading northwest to southeast across the country during the morning. By the afternoon, the cloud lifts a little, some breaks developing, but actually I think a lot of places will keep the cloud cover and heavy showers will form. Hail and thunder possible in some of the livelier downpours, but away from the showers, actually 17, 18 Celsius possible in, well, eastern Scotland, central and eastern England. So it's going to be feeling a bit warmer. But those heavy showers, of course, will be pretty lively in places, especially towards central and eastern parts of the UK. They ease away overnight, clear spells for many, but cloudier for Scotland, for Northern Ireland as well, with some outbreaks of rain in the far northwest. 8 to 10 Celsius typically as we wake up on Thursday, And plenty of sunshine to greet us across much of England and Wales. Eastern Scotland generally bright as well. Western Scotland, Northern Ireland seeing cloud and some outbreaks of mostly light rain. That turns more showery into the afternoon. 1 or 2 showers possible for Western England and Wales as well. But actually a good deal of dry and bright weather, especially towards the southeast, where somewhere like London could get 20 or 21 Celsius, mid to high teens generally elsewhere. The warmth stays with us on Friday and into the weekend. Some outbreaks of rain or showers on Friday, but drier and brighter for the vast majority on Saturday and Sunday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
OK, with the time at 9:17, we're going to go to LA and speak to the lovely Kinsey Schofield, talking about all the latest showbiz headlines. And Kinsey, I don't know if you've recovered yet from the Met Gala and the feast of dresses and the who's wearing what. It's been busy.
Well, I'm looking at you two wearing pink. You both look gorgeous today.
Well, it's a complete accident.
Yeah.
It's a complete accident, but we might have a wee phone call before we head out to work from now on to say, you know, Isabel, it improves the way you look.
And we'll get Kinsey in on it as well. In fact,
Yeah.
Claire Muldoon on Papers was in pink as well this morning, Kinsey. It was only David who didn't get the memo. We could send it to everybody.
Our newspapers here, Kinsey, today have caught up with all the pictures from the Met Gala there. Is there anything that... well, of course, the Marilyn Monroe dress, isn't it? I mean, that's...
The dress.
Yeah.
I think it's what everybody was talking about, but there's a lot of anger in the States. I don't know if you are hearing about that yet, and that's why I'm here.
As a film buff, I would say it was a very bad idea. I think it's disrespectful to do it. And funny enough, I just watched a documentary on Netflix on Marilyn Monroe over the weekend, and she was much better looking than I remember. She was a better actress than I remember, and a troubled soul, dead at 36.
And not just that, but if you're watching the documentary I think you watched, you know that dress kind of caused some of the chaos.
Yes.
So this iconic piece of history flaunted on the Met Gala red carpet, you know, the producer of Marilyn Behind the Icon has complained, that is a movie and a podcast, saying that this is a historic piece of clothing that should be in an air-conditioned, you know, sealed tight vault or display, and that it should not be in a space where there's alcohol flowing and, you know, body makeup and perfume. So a lot of people upset. There were over 2,500 negative comments on Marilyn Monroe's official Instagram page, because she has one of those. I don't know if you know that, but she is verified on Instagram, the Marilyn brand. So Marilyn fans also upset. It's not just some of these historians that followed Marilyn's career, but true fans that just love the actress think that it was in poor taste and that it was a publicity stunt that really did not, you know, who did it benefit other than Kim Kardashian? Because it's certainly not Monroe.
Well, you know what? Sarah Vine, she's a big columnist here in the UK. She was basically complaining that Kim Kardashian was a pound shop replica of Marilyn and that she was a fraud because she didn't have any talent, unlike Marilyn. But my view is, so often these beautiful dresses and expensive garments, they get put away in boxes and never worn again. Why not let it have one more night out on the red carpet, for goodness sake? And, you know, it means one less dress is being made. I think there's a bit of upcycling. Why not?
Well, you're always the glass half full girl, and that's why I love you. I just think that, you know, Marilyn is a real Hollywood celebrity, the type of celebrity that Kim Kardashian has always aspired to be and hasn't necessarily been able to achieve. And so it does kind of feel tacky in the sense that this is a reality star, and we all know how she got, you know, her first job, wearing this truly iconic dress that belonged to somebody that really was talented and a troubled spirit, somebody whose life ended so tragically.
Tragic is the term. I mean, she spent a lot of her early years in an orphanage. She was fostered. She always thought of herself as a waif and a stray with this. Really serious about her acting abilities. Got hooked on prescription drugs, used by men. She also used men, it has to be said, as well. But absolutely incredible story, as I say, and it only lasted 36 years. So there we go, same dress, but did Kim wear it as well? I was actually taken aback. I said, that's surely not the dress.
Yeah, I think she wears it beautifully, and I had to lose some weight to squeeze into it, I believe. And given how much bodies have changed since the 60s, it's pretty impressive to squeeze into a dress like that.
Yeah. Not
to be tacky, but I really wanted to see the back.
Yes,
you know?
I'm suspicious about that. No, I was suspicious about that, Kinsey. Funny you should mention that, because she had the first stall the whole time, and she's obviously famous for her rear, so I thought she would display it at any given opportunity.
You're not telling me they cut it open at the back?
Well, maybe she couldn't do it up. That was my theory.
That's your theory.
Just saying.
Now, here's the most awful. Here, Kinsey, this is the most awful news. Awful news. Meg Ryan is back in the movies.
I was looking for the bad news.
And I'm going to tell you why. When she comes to do the press interviews, I mean, the woman is absolutely phobic about being interviewed. Absolutely phobic. And I had the unfortunate experience of trying to interview her once, and she's had another famous interview here in the UK with the chat show host Michael Parkinson. And Michael Parkinson said to her, "If you were me, what would you do now?" And she said, "Wrap it up." And basically this interview lasted 2 minutes or so. But if you've never interviewed her, please don't put yourself through the experience. The woman in your contract, I mean, in their contracts, they've got to do press and publicity for their projects. She must be dreading it already.
This is the best tea I've had in a very long time. I'm wondering, did you interview her after she had the Russell Crowe affair? Because I think that changed her relationship with journalists extremely.
I interviewed her. She made a film. She was an alcoholic in it. And
I know the one.
What was it called?
I love it.
But it was a very good film.
A Man Loves a Woman or something like that.
It was a very good film.
I think I know. Is it in the... I think it's in the League of Women or something like that with Adam Brody. I think that's what you're talking about.
When a Man Loves a Woman.
She acted in it with her husband. What's his name? I know I can see his face.
Dennis Quaid.
This is hard.
Sorry, who?
Andy Garcia.
Dennis Quaid?
No, not Andy Garcia. No.
Was it when she was with Dennis Quaid in the 90s?
Dennis Quaid, yeah, it was Dennis Quaid, absolutely Dennis Quaid. You weren't allowed to ask any questions about Dennis Quaid, and she actually sat in a room with me, and there was a phone, and every time I asked a question the PR people weren't happy with, the phone
rang at some stage, and I said, I know I'm not supposed to talk about Dennis Quaid. That's probably him on the phone now. It was a harrowing experience. Anyway, on the screen, I'm sure it'll all work out very, very well.
Yeah, she's going to be with David Duchovny. It's called What Happens Later. She's also directing the film. And this is 13 years after her last romantic comedy. So people are really excited to see her back in that seat. And funny enough, I read an older interview with her not too long ago, and she was talking about the way celebrity had changed. And I was thinking about, this is America's sweetheart. At one point or another, she was the ultimate Hollywood actress, celebrity. And she was just talking about how celebrities evolved and how it's not the same anymore and it doesn't mean anything. And I just thought how interesting that we're going to go to Kim Kardashian to Meg Ryan, because I truly feel like Kim Kardashian, that was the start of that evolution where celebrity just did not mean the same thing.
Interesting. Well, going from Kim Kardashian to Meg Ryan, we're now going to Kanye, and he's now facing a sort of similar situation to Ed Sheeran, someone claiming he's stolen some of their work.
Isn't this crazy? Jesus walks, but money talks. A bishop named David Paul Moten is claiming that Kanye took 70 seconds of his sermon for the song Come to Life. And this is on the Donda album. He is suing Kanye. He's suing every one of the labels that Kanye is associated with and that's associated with the Donda album. But you just have to think, you are under the impression that God led you to this job as a bishop and you're supposed to spread his message, and then you're going to go sue the guy that is spreading Jesus's message to millions, if not billions, of other people. Like, bless your heart. I don't think it's in the right place.
Well, maybe he's going to donate the damages to charity. You never know.
So, Kinsey, we're out of time.
Isabel.
Yes?
There you go. Half glass.
I said that's Isabel, glass half full.
Oh, you should work with her.
She does. We are.
See it in the flesh. Look, my glass is nearly empty.
Yeah, yours is always half empty. Right, on that note, Kinsey, we say goodbye to you. We say goodbye to our viewers and our listeners wherever they join us from this morning. Up next is Tom Harwood with the briefing, and we'll be back tomorrow at 6 o'clock.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's a bit dull and damp out there first thing, but it will very gradually brighten up, albeit with some heavy showers later, and it's a warmer day compared to the last few days, particularly towards the east. High pressure is towards the southwest of the UK. Around the top of that high, weather fronts are toppling in, and these are generally weak affairs, but, well, they're bringing an awful lot of cloud and some outbreaks of rain. The rain tending to be on and off, mostly it's light, but a few moderate bursts in there, and they are spreading northwest to southeast across the country during the morning. By the afternoon, the cloud lifts a little, some breaks developing, but actually I think a lot of places will keep the cloud cover and heavy showers will form. Hail and thunder possible in some of the livelier downpours, but away from the showers, actually 17, 18 Celsius possible in, well, eastern Scotland, central and eastern England, so it's going to be feeling a bit warmer. But those heavy showers, of course, will be pretty lively in places, especially towards central and eastern parts of the UK. They ease away overnight, clear spells for many, but cloudier for Scotland, for Northern Ireland